FPS Win. Written by
嘟嘟雪球
2 days later, the first batch of equipment needed by the Dongfeng Corps arrived, and at the same time, a mercenary team of 200 people organized by Mu Gui also arrived. Although Mu Gui is considered a first-class mercenary group in Mengka, and even the entire Shan state, in fact, the quality of these people still makes Chen Chen shake his head. Except for the 8-man elite combat team, all other mercenaries looked lazy and sloppy. At first glance, their quality was not much better than the Kokong allied forces that Chen Chen had escaped from. And this is already considered a high-quality mercenary. At least they knew the basic coordination and had learned when to shoot and when not to shoot. Don't think it's ridiculous. This alone is enough for most of the mercenaries here to train for 3 months. Chen Chen can't hold too much hope for them, but since they're to play a role, basic training still needs to be done. Therefore, this task fell on Chasely's head. In exchange, the teaching materials on river battle that Chen Chen had promised before were provided to Chasely free of charge. Text version. Want him to teach you in person? Hey, let's talk later. While Mu Gui and Chasely's teams were training, Chen Chen was not idle either. The attack plan against Xiaoxianyuan village immediately entered the discussion stage. The commanders of the 3 parties sat together and began to deduce the subsequent attack strategy based on the existing intelligence. The terrain of Xiaoxianyuan village is relatively simple. In the middle is a flat basin of nearly 5 square kilometers and about 2 kilometers long and wide. It is surrounded by mountains, forming a natural barrier. If we want to launch an attack on the core area of this base, we must first break through the outer defense line and complete the deployment on the mountainous area at the edge of the basin. But therein lies the problem. Nakam has set up several sentry posts outside the basin, and the control area is about 5 kilometers in length and width. As long as our large force enters this range, they will definitely notice it. Nuakong had plenty of time to escape. With our manpower, we simply did not have enough to intercept him, nor could we organize an effective pursuit. It's very, very troublesome. Killing the rat is not a problem. The biggest problem is how to surround the rat and prevent it from running away. The speaker was the commander of Mu Gui, nicknamed Lao Zhu. Although his name seemed casual, he was actually an experienced soldier and was not weak in command ability. The opinions he puts forward can be sharp and hit the pain points directly. After hearing his words, the jackal beside him also said, "Indeed, with the heavy firepower prepared by the sunken ship, it will be no problem to destroy Nuakong's camp. 360 shells are basically enough to destroy the main gathering area of Xiaoxianyuan village. Plus, we also have mortars and fuel air explosives, which have almost stretched the damage to light infantry units to the limit. After a round of firepower coverage, it will be very easy for infantry to advance. It's impossible to maintain the enemy's morale. Once the battle starts, it will be a one-sided situation. But here's the problem. We have enough firepower but not enough personnel. What if the other party finds out they can't beat them and just runs away? What should we do then? We can't stop them." After saying that, he and Lao Zhu looked at Chen Chen, waiting for his answer. Chen Chen frowned and shook his head, then answered, "I've thought about using fire attack before, but the problem is that this area is too large. Once the fire starts, it will be beyond our control. You can't dig a fire break, and it's impossible to put out the fire. In the end, the whole forest will burn down, and it will become an international incident. There will really be no way to end it. A relatively reliable method is to simultaneously clear all the outposts on the periphery, but there are too many uncontrollable factors in this plan. If we miss even one, the operation will be declared a failure." Speaking of this, Chen Chen couldn't help but feel helpless. No wonder the operation to capture Nakam in the previous life was so difficult and even failed 3 times in a row. The position chosen by this bastard is really easy to defend and difficult to attack, and his defensive strategy really shows that he is afraid of death. At the end of the tunnel, the North even planned to launch a drone airstrike. If Nuakong had not been startled and wanted to cross the border from Myanmar to Laos, it would be uncertain whether he could be caught. Looking at the jackal and the old pig who were looking at each other in bewilderment, Chen Chen shook his head and continued, "The key to the problem we are facing now is essentially just one. The area is too big, the people are too few, and we can't search at all. To solve this problem, there are actually only 2 directions we can choose. Or, reduce his living space and force him into the core area of Xiaoxianyuan village. Or, we have to add more people to expand our detection and control range. But it is basically impossible to add more people. There are too many forces involved, and the subsequent distribution of interests will become very complicated, which is not conducive to unified command. So, the only feasible solution is to reduce the living space. Besides fire attack, do you have any other methods?" Hearing Chen Chen's question, the jackal and the old pig immediately fell into deep thought. To be honest, if this kind of problem is really placed in the context of large-scale combat, it is actually not a problem at all. 10 of them are surrounding them. I will just pull a human wall to sweep over. What can you do? But now the Dongfeng Corps has too few people. They can barely organize a search of the mountain. But once the enemy forces a breakthrough, it will be almost impossible to stop them with such a weak defense line. Poison gas? Hooray! The jackal asked. Poison gas is not a good idea. Can you guys in Chaisley get it? Wanfeng Group can't get it anyway. As for laying mines, they are basically useless unless they are airdropped. Otherwise, the density won't be enough, which is equivalent to no mines at all. The old pig immediately shook his head. What about communication suppression? Electronic jamming? No, this thing doesn't solve the core problem at all. What if we catch the enemy by surprise? After the battle begins, Nuakong can still run away. Damn, that's hard. Chen Chen let out a long sigh. He could now understand the mentality of people whose homes were invaded by cockroaches. Who can't kill a cockroach? But if you don't kill it on the spot and it crawls into some corner, it will be very disgusting. Because you don't know when it will come out, whether it will crawl onto your face while you are asleep. But to deal with cockroaches, at least you can do as Teacher Zhonghu said, rub some boric acid pills on it, and let it eat it and die in an invisible place. But Nuakong? Chen Chen suddenly realized, I understand. We are all too narrow-minded. Hearing his words, the other two immediately looked at him. How? Fences don't have to be physical, they can also be psychological. Chen Chen continued. We always want to put a physical fence around him, but a psychological fence is more effective. First of all, Xiaoxianyuan village is his largest camp. No matter what, he can't just give it up. At least he has to give it a try first. Secondly, if he loses the fight, even if he wants to run, he must seek shelter in all directions. So, we have to catch him. The key is not to catch him, but to beat him. What we have to do is to suppress his direction of seeking asylum. We will spread the word as soon as the fight starts that we will fight anyone who dares to shelter Nakam. No matter where Nakam was last seen, as long as he has any connection with him, we will put him on the list. No matter the cost, I will beat you to death. We obviously have the strength because we represent Northern Shan State, and even Hua State in Thailand. Under our oppression, small forces in the entire Golden Triangle region will not be able to accept him. Then, he only has 3 choices left. Either find the Pamong Battalion, or find the 505th Brigade, or hide in your own shelter and escape. But there is a big background now. Everyone thinks Big Brother wants Nakam dead, and Big Brother might actually want Nakam dead. So, the Thai side is unlikely to argue with him. Maybe they're planning to take action themselves. The only one who can provide him with shelter is the 505th Brigade, and he doesn't know that the 505th Brigade has already defected. Nuakong is a cockroach, and the 505th Brigade is a boric acid pill. Contact Zhao Jiaoyang. He knows what to do. The jackal and the pig nodded in unison. After a moment, the pig suddenly asked, what if he didn't choose the 505th Brigade and actually ran away? Chen Chen smiled. If the monk can escape, can the temple also escape? I'm not fighting Nakam for fun. He has so many safe houses and concubines. After clearing out the main force, I'll immediately launch a mopping up operation. I will wipe out all his resources and kill all the remaining members. I will force him to eat the pill, because if he doesn't, he won't survive. Nuakong will definitely die, but he doesn't have to die directly on the battlefield. Cut off his roots, cut off his nutrients, and he will die. Okay, I understand. The jackal slapped the table decisively, and then said, then we just have to fight and destroy his main force first. I completely understand your thinking. Others beat Nuakong to decapitate him, but you want to smash his body and let his head suffocate to death due to lack of oxygen. That's right, Chen Chen answered firmly. Thus, this strategy, which seemed simple and crude to the point of being outrageous, was decided. In the next few days, while waiting for the equipment to arrive, Chen Chen was not idle. He organized a team to go to the vicinity of Xiaoxianyuan village, completed a field reconnaissance, and then formulated a refined offensive tactic based on the reconnaissance results. Yes, the strategy can be rough, but the tactics must be detailed. As the reconnaissance situation continued to be fed back and the granularity of intelligence continued to decrease, he gained more and more details, even to the point where he could play out conspiracies and tricks on paper. The tactics are mature. At the same time, the joint training of Chasely and Mugue's forces was basically completed, and the two sides had basic tacit understanding and cooperation. On March 1st, the last batch of equipment of the Dongfeng Corps arrived. There were 50 mules, donkeys, and ponies collected from all over the place. All the equipment was loaded onto the vehicles, and more than 200 people from the Dongfeng Corps were ready to go. Before setting off, Chen Chen delivered an inspiring speech in accordance with the requirements of other parties, but his speech actually consisted of only a few sentences. Our cause is just and our goal is clear. Want to get rich? If you want, then do it. Go and fight. Nakam has left everything he has there. Kill him, and all the honor and treasure will be yours. After that, he waved his hand vigorously, and all members boarded the boat and the car. This not-so-large team was divided into 2 groups. One group went along the Mekong River, leaving behind long waves and splitting the turbulent waves, while the other group went along the Mengyang Highway, carrying billowing dust and moving forward. The elite ground team will turn into the path at Taping, then pass Mingyu and meet up with the ship at Wampafu. Here, they will enter the final preparation stage, and once the attack is launched, it will be unstoppable. Meanwhile, in Xiaoxianyuan village, Nuakong had already known the news of Wang Mie's death, and at this time he fell into an unprecedented confusion. In less than a month, his generals died one after another. Their deaths were so sudden that he himself could not understand why. The only thing he knew was that someone wanted him dead, and that person was so arrogant that he wanted to kill him in the simplest and most brutal way. This is a serious provocation to oneself and a challenge to one's own status. Run? Of course, running away is also an option. However, the other party does not represent any official power. If he just runs away, how can he do business in the future? At least he has to fight first. If you win, no matter how big the loss is, you can get back everything you lost before. If he lost the battle, he would at least have a way to retreat and a chance to make a comeback. So he made a decision and ordered all the troops to retreat and defend Xiaoxianyuan village. At this time, the only remaining leader Zabo was standing in front of him, reporting the latest intelligence to him. The composition of the other party's personnel has basically been determined. They are all Mungkam mercenaries. One of them is the Dongfeng Corps, which is the one that killed Sangkong before. They are approaching us along the waterway and are expected to reach Wampafu in 2 hours. We were planning to launch a surprise attack there, but the enemy ground forces got there first in armored vehicles. They established a defensive line first and pushed us back. It was very steady. We may have no choice but to retreat and defend. Boss, if it really doesn't work, why don't you go first? Hearing what Jabba said, Nong Kong shook his head vigorously. He crushed a pill, put it in front of his nose, and took a deep breath, then said, since they dare to come, there is no reason for me to run away. They thought I was going to run away. Who the hell are they? Let's fight first. We have 1,500 people, and they only have 200. No matter what, the advantage is mine. Xiaoshianyuan village is easy to defend, but difficult to attack. Do they want to break in? Then let's see how many lives they have, and whether they are enough to fertilize my land. Wampa for River Road, 1800 hours p.m. The Dongfeng Corps had just experienced a small-scale battle, and the mercenaries from the Nongkong group who came to harass them were almost repelled at the first encounter by the vanguard team composed of the Dongfeng Corps, Chasely, and Mugui's elite troops. After leaving behind more than a dozen corpses, the enemy troops quickly retreated. The vanguard team advanced 200 meters forward, established a defense line in the jungle, and opened up a landing window for the subsequent large troops. Within an hour, all the equipment was unloaded and all the personnel were ready to go. Chen Chen made the offensive deployment immediately, without any hesitation. The vanguard team will be deployed in the form of a 4-man combat team, searching in the direction of Xiaoshianyuan village. Be careful. The jungle here is dense. Everyone should use the C-shaped search method to move forward. We need to open up a jungle passage for the large force to ensure that it can reach the designated artillery position within 2 hours. Be alert as you advance. Pay attention to the evacuation of the team, and avoid possible artillery fire from the enemy. After the position is established, the assault team will continue to move forward and find the enemy's artillery position. According to intelligence, the enemy has at least 3 mountain howitzers of unknown caliber. We must destroy them immediately to prevent our large forces from being suppressed by artillery fire. At the same time, Commando Group 9 and Group 10, upon receiving our signal, immediately drive the marauders to clear the way and assault Xiaoshianyuan village along the only road to ensure that 19 Malawing Quaches is deployed on time. The fire group will fire 3 rounds of rockets, which must be completed within 1 minute. Then the main force will launch an attack. After closing the distance, use fuel air explosive bombs to clear the buildings and personnel. I will use the mortars to provide cover fire. You just charge and leave the barrage to me. Clear. On the radio, all the team leaders answered in unison. Chen Chen did not say much, and the predetermined combat plan was immediately implemented. He personally led an assault team composed of Li Bang, Yang Shu, and Sang Yi, and formed a corner with another team led by Jackal. They rushed to the front and began to march into the depths of the jungle. The 8-man team all used 4-eye night vision goggles, while the other vanguard teams were each equipped with at least 2 monocular thermal imagers. Although the sky was still relatively bright, their advantages in equipment and vision had still been pushed to the limit. Chen Chen was moving very fast. In the previous chase with Wan Pangsang, he had adapted to moving forward with a thermal imager. Although there was no Lin He leading the way at this time, every step he took still landed on solid ground. Group 1 found no abnormalities. Group 2 reports. Chen Chen held his gun and stood guard. After a moment, the radio came with Jackal's reply in the headset. Team 2 found no abnormalities. Attention, traces of human activity have been found. The enemy may have retreated. It is judged that there may be a key defense area ahead. This was the first time that Chen Chen actually fought side by side with the Jackal, and the military qualities displayed by the other party really reassured Chen Chen. The Jackal is no rookie. No matter how foolish and funny he is in his daily life, once he is on the battlefield, the murderous aura he reveals can really wipe out most of the mercenaries in seconds. Professional and calm. He even required all members to study tactical vocabulary intensively to facilitate communication. Even without the help of Chen Chen as a translator, communication with other groups was unimpeded. Such teammates are really reassuring. Chen Chen scanned the area with his night vision goggles, then gave the order. Understood. Sang Yi, move forward in AZ shape, establish a firepower support point, and prepare for a leap forward assault. Mulberry, leaves received. Without any hesitation, Sang Yi, the number 2 bootlicker who had just evolved, took up his gun and went forward. After moving forward 50 meters in AZ shape, he set up the M240 general-purpose machine gun behind a fallen tree, establishing a firepower support point for all the people in Group 1 and Group 2 for the leap forward assault. Afterwards, everyone followed in stages and continued their reconnaissance. At this time, they were less than 3 kilometers away from Xiaoshianyuan village and only 1 kilometer away from the designated position. The living space of Nakam's armed group has been suppressed to the limit. If their peripheral firepower is to take action, it is now. Bang, bang, bang. The gunshots did not come from the enemy, but from the M240 in Sang Ye's hand. Engage the enemy. Engage the enemy. 12 o'clock direction. For people. Entering the rhythm of battle. All commands became extremely brief. Chen Chen did not hesitate, raised his gun, and quickly aimed in the direction indicated by the M240 tracer bullet. 4 enemies emitting red light appeared in front of him. Less than 100 meters away. In a jungle battle, this distance was not close, but it was definitely not far either. But it was just within Chen Chen's strongest feeling range. Bang! With a burst of fire, the enemy hiding behind the tree fell to the ground on the spot. At the same time, Yang Shu and Li Bang also began to act. A smoke bomb was thrown, blocking the enemy's entire vision. The enemy fell into a brief confusion, and the second enemy fell to the ground amid flying wood chips. 2 groups of enemies, more than 10 people. Hearing the Jackal's call through the headset, Chen Chen rushed forward quickly and came to Sang Ye's side. He patted Sang Ye's shoulder, completed the identification of friend or foe, then quickly pulled to the left and found the shooting angle. The third enemy hiding in the tree fell headfirst with a loud bang after being hit by a 5.56mm bullet. Chen Chen did not stop, but continued to move to the left to support Group 2. 10 people were moving vaguely in the woods. Just as the Jackal had expected, the enemy had deployed a large amount of firepower here, ready to block the advance of the assault team with intensive defense. However, all this was in vain. Their combat quality is too weak, their firepower density is too low, and their tactical level is too poor. The strongest fighting force of the entire Myanmar and even the entire Shan state has gathered together. Who can stop them? The 8-man team is like a sharp knife swinging in the forest, and everything in front of it is cut in two without any hindrance. From contact with the enemy to annihilation, it only takes 1 minute. 2 teams cleared. The sunken ship can return. Received, return. Jackal had a brief conversation with Chen Chen, and then 2 teams of 4 were formed again. At the same time, fighting broke out in other advancing groups. They may have been a little slower, but they definitely did not encounter any insurmountable obstacles. The so-called scouts deployed by Nakam on the periphery went crazy. Who has ever fought a battle like this? There is no vision and no firepower. I thought the defenders had an advantage, but in fact, they didn't care about your advantage at all. What is the real advantage? It takes you 5 seconds to aim, while they only need 2 seconds. It takes you to avoid cover and find a shooting range, while they can just sweep with fire. When you try to find the enemy from the dense bushes, the enemy has already marked your position with a red mark. Retreat. Only retreat. Nuakong's outer armed forces immediately collapsed, and Chen Chen said calmly, "Everyone slow down and be careful of booby traps. Don't follow the old path they have taken. Open up a new path. Clear." The headsets were filled with replies, and the assault team continued to move forward. Occasionally, in the silent jungle, there were sounds of booby traps being detonated, but there was no news of injuries. Until the last 200 meters, as the density of booby traps continued to increase, someone was finally hit. A broadsword swept across the entire area, and 2 members of assault team 4 were knocked down by steel balls at the edge. Group 4 was forced to stay on the spot to guard and rescue the wounded, but these insignificant casualties were completely unable to stop the Dongfeng Corps' advance. After crossing the last ridge, Xiaoxianyuan village finally appeared in front of Chen Chen. People. There are people everywhere. A team of 1,500 people may not sound like a lot, but in fact, when spread out over an area of 5 square kilometers, it seems so large. Chen Chen set up the Recon 3 telescope and performed the first scan of the distant position. The deployment is not much different from the previous reconnaissance results. There are 4 main positions and bunkers in total, and the positions of 3 guns are unknown. There were 6 groups of armed personnel, each with about 150 people, and the others were scattered around. The defense is very tight, with at least 20 heavy machine gun firing points. Jackal, Poplar, prepare to snipe. Receive. Jackal answered immediately, while Yang Shu walked around Chen Chen from behind and took off the M82A1 on his back. The distance of nearly 1 kilometer is too far. Only this kind of thing can have a chance to reach the enemies in the core area. Only this gun can have the effect of alerting the enemy. Everyone in the assault team, disperse and prepare for the bombardment. Clear. At the command, everyone dispersed at a distance of more than 30 meters. Yang Shu set up the M82A1, and Chen Chen set up the L115A3 he had just obtained. Take a deep breath. Chen Chen let out a breath of foul air. Arriving at the designated location does not mean the start of a large-scale battle. They were not on the artillery position, but were 600 meters away from it. This assault team must launch a feint attack to attract most of the firepower from Xiaoxianyuan village and buy time for the deployment of artillery positions. They have to last at least 30 minutes. A high-value target has been found and locked on, next to the heavy machine gun at enemy position number 3. Received, locked. Locking. 8 combat teams, 9 sniper rifles, all locked onto the same enemy. 3, 2, 1, fire. Bang. 9 almost overlapping gunshots rang out over Xiaoxianyuan village. The unlucky guy was hit by 2 bullets at the same time. The large caliber bullet of the M82A1 broke him into 2 pieces, and the 8.6mm bullet that followed made his upper body spin. 2 out of 9. That's enough. Reselect the target. Chen Chen gave the order immediately, but at this moment, the enemy in Xiaoxianyuan village moved. Bang, 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 bang. There was a huge echo, and the heavy machine gun began to fire, and then there was a flash of fire in a corner. Chen Chen's pupils suddenly contracted. Cannon, take cover. Boom. 105 mountain howitzer. Chen Chen fell down suddenly, and the shells exploded in the distance. But then, a louder roar of firing was heard. The shells whizzed past, and in the headset, the Jackal shouted in shock. "FUCK. They actually have AH-2. Chen Chen was stunned for a moment, but suddenly he understood. This guy might have come from Pakistan. AH-2 is one of the most exported artillery pieces in the north, so it is not difficult to buy it. The difficulty lies in the fact that they were able to bypass numerous inspections and deliver it to northern Myanmar, and then hide it in the mountains. There is no time to think about it. I have to get rid of it. Yang Shu, find the cannon. Hit its frame. Hit the hydraulic stabilizer next to it." Chen Chen is not afraid of the 105 mountain pomegranate at all. The lethality of this thing is actually not that objective. But the AH-2 is different. It carries a 155mm howitzer. No gun mount. No vehicle. Yang Shu answered quickly. No gun mount? A drag model? Makes sense. It is also impossible for Nakam to get a self-propelled artillery model. Then hit the tires, clear. Yang Shu immediately started shooting, and snipers from other teams also began to assist, covering fire. Meanwhile, the enemy had already begun their assault. A team of more than 200 people drove towards the assault team under the cover of 2 armored pickup trucks, and heavy machine guns continued to fire with amazing suppression power. Bazooka! Shoot them down! In order to pursue speed, the assault team only carried a total of 4 rocket launchers, and now they had to use them, accompanied by a puff of smoke, for rockets flew out of the chamber. The forward speed of the 2 armored pickups was hindered, but immediately, the muzzle of the 105 locked onto the team member who fired the rocket launcher. The battle became more and more intense, and the enemy's infantry moved forward to a favorable shooting position, further increasing the suppressive firepower, and the assault team suffered its first group of casualties. 25 minutes have passed. Chen Chen's heartbeat slowed down, and at this moment, he heard the sound of the white dog behind him. We have arrived at the designated bombardment position. Sinking ship, Jackal, come and fire. Amid the rumbling of artillery fire, Na Kong hid in an underground bunker, looking through the observation window with satisfaction at the flames that kept lighting up on the distant mountains. The opponent was indeed very strong. Even under such firepower from our side, they could still hold on for nearly half an hour. But this is already the limit. Under the bombardment of 3 real cannons, their defense line would quickly collapse, their morale would quickly be broken, and because of the disconnection between the front and the rear, their support troops would simply not be able to arrive in time. Now, their assault team was less than 200 meters away from the position of the first group of enemies. As long as they launched another charge, they could completely defeat them. As for the enemy behind, they pose no threat at all. When has the refueling tactic ever won? And the most important thing is that our team has boosted morale. Although they suffered more than 40 casualties, the assault team still moved forward. Provoke me? This is the end. Do you really think I'm a drug dealer who only knows how to sell drugs? How do you think I can stand on equal footing with so many warlords here and maintain such a large territory and such a wide trade route? You guys are worthy. For you, I have mobilized almost all the forces I can mobilize just to fight to the death here. But your performance has disappointed me a little. In such a short time, the outcome has been decided. As expected, there is strength in numbers. No matter how fancy you are only 200 people. Now dozens of vanguards are about to be wiped out. What waves can you still make? Nong Kong became more and more proud. He took another sip of the powder, and his head felt a little dizzy. He felt that he should go out and take a look. At least he should show his face once to let his men know that he was not afraid of death. So he pushed open the heavy blast-proof door and walked out of the underground bunker. Standing on the ground, the battle situation is clearer. It was really a crushing victory. It was really one-sided. He laughed with satisfaction, but in the next second his laughter stopped abruptly. A fire suddenly appeared on the hillside on the east side. Immediately afterwards, bright yellow rockets like locusts swarmed out densely. He opened his mouth in shock, and his body couldn't help shaking. He even forgot to go back until Zabo knocked him to the ground and pulled him back into the shelter, and then he woke up from his dream. Rocket. Lots of rockets. At 8:05 p.m., the Dongfeng Corps completed the deployment of its artillery positions and began firing rockets towards Xiaoshianyuan village at a distance of 2 kilometers. The sky of Xiaoshianyuan village was covered with dense flames, and in between were phosphorus aluminum incendiary bombs that fell continuously and exploded with huge flames. At this moment, the east wind blows and the stars fall like rain. The hellish scene directly frightened the militants in the Xiaoshianyuan village camp. In fact, among modern weapons, in terms of pressure alone, Chen Chen always felt that if nuclear bombs could rank first, then rockets must be ranked second without a doubt. The reason is very simple. Heavy artillery kills people in a flash. You can't even feel anything unusual before the person has turned into a ball of powder. Bullets kill people without a trace. Many times you just feel like you've been bitten by a bug, and then you die exhausted. As for RPGs and flamethrowers, their range is too short and their speed is too slow, so you always feel you have a chance to dodge them. There are only rockets. They fly over you so slowly and all over the place, leaving you nowhere to hide and no way to resist. The moment Katyusha's high-pitched singing voice sounded, it was the countdown to the end. The rain of fire fell on the ground, burning not only the gunpowder, but also the flames of life. 360 rockets fired rapidly. Each launch tube fired 4 rounds, taking a total of 4 minutes. After that, Chen Chen and Jackal each operated a Type 6360 mortar, and the barrage extended to cover the infantry's forward charge. They encountered almost no obstacles because everyone was crazy. The enemies who had never really experienced large-scale battles chose to flee as soon as they saw the dense rockets falling. But in reality, where could they escape to? Compared with the nearly 5 square kilometers of land, the number of rockets is not large. However, almost all the armed personnel were gathered in a few main positions, so the sky fire falling on their heads would be extremely considerable. Not to mention, the rapid firing of phosphorus aluminum incendiary bombs by Chen Chen and the Jackal like their lives were creating layer upon layer of firewalls around them, and their range of movement was almost suppressed to the limit. Xiaoshianyuan village was in chaos, but Chen Chen was extremely calm. The shells are empty, he spoke. My side is empty too, the Jackal replied. There were a total of 120 shells, but they did not last more than 5 minutes in their hands. This is not rapid shooting that pursues the highest speed, but the speed after constantly adjusting the landing point of the ammunition. The ordinary mercenaries of the Wood Ghost Corps, who were responsible for delivering ammunition, were all dumbfounded. They had never thought that someone could actually beat the mortar like this. And now, the 2 men standing in front of them were like the legendary Cannon King. Chen Chen looked at the Jackal with admiration in his eyes. Good boy, your basic skills are pretty good. The artillery fire is over. Prepare for the assault. Clear. All the assault teams on standby responded immediately and at the same time. A few minutes later, following the signal flare fired by the marauders after they broke through the last minefield and arrived at the entrance of Xiaoshianyuan village, everyone began to gather around the armored vehicle. Behind them were two F-150 pickup trucks equipped with Mk-19s and a warrior vehicle equipped with heavy machine guns. Rush! At Chen Chen's command, the convoy started moving. The large force gradually moved towards them and gathered into an indestructible reef in the turbulent current of Xiaoshianyuan village. They swept through everything, leaving no grass growing wherever they went. Their firepower poured onto the body of every moving creature, tearing it apart in an instant. What? An enemy counterattack? The heavy machine guns that are the nightmare of infantry? 19 Malawian Quaches will create an absolute safe zone. The violent rain of bullets poured down again, and the drug dealers who had just recovered from the fear caused by the rockets were suddenly shrouded in greater fear. There is nowhere to escape. The underground fortifications are already packed with people. But so what? Do they think they can get away with it? At the entrance of the fortifications and those sturdy buildings, bombs were fired one after another, suffocating the rats hiding underground into a pot of hot porridge. Of course, there were casualties as well. Stray bullets hit more than a dozen unlucky guys, forcing them to fall to the ground and hide. But this could not change the situation at all, because in close combat, once the morale gap widened, the outcome of the battle was actually no longer in doubt. The barrel of the gun was already scorching hot, and under the unstoppable attack, all resistance collapsed. The scattered enemies with strong fighting spirit tried to operate the cannons and heavy machine guns, but were immediately shot and killed by sniper positions hundreds of meters away. When three half-bodies were stacked behind a heavy machine gun, no one wanted to move forward anymore. And then, there is only one question left for the Dongfang Corps. How can we keep them as much as possible? How can we kill as many drug dealers as possible? And how can we ensure that Nakam will no longer have the basis to regroup and make a comeback? Chase. The convoy will go forward to clean up. Assault groups 4 to 10 will follow and clean up. Everyone else, stay on guard. Where's the loudspeaker? Draw a green zone with the current position as the center. All enemies lay down their weapons and surrender in the green zone. Outside the green zone, shoot anyone who can move if you see them. I don't want anyone alive outside the green zone. In fact, Chen Chen really wanted to give the order leave no one alive, because after all, his own manpower was too small. Even though the high-intensity bombing and assault had caused at least 300 casualties, the enemy still outnumbered them by a large margin. Leaving someone alive means leaving yourself at risk. But he had no choice. He couldn't turn an offensive operation into a massacre. If he did that, he would not be able to get the support of other regular forces in the subsequent development. Therefore, some risks must be taken. However, this choice did not cause him too much trouble. Of the 250-strong team, there were still 230 people left besides the commandos who had gone forward. 30 of them stayed on guard, setting up heavy machine gun positions to prepare to receive prisoners, while the other 200 continued to sweep and drove all the enemies into one place. Chen Chen and Jackal's team played an irreplaceable vanguard role. They were like windbreakers in a cycling race, smoothly splitting the opponent's remaining line of defense, and then the large force that swarmed and would immediately engulf the enemy. Everyone was fighting like crazy. Even the ordinary mercenaries, whom Chen Chen had looked down upon before setting off, displayed combat capabilities far beyond their actual strength. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just so easy to win when you're in a favorable situation. A game with a favorable wind is easier to play under saturated firepower coverage. The transition time from attack to harvest does not exceed 10 minutes. The entire harvesting process lasted less than 30 minutes. The forward commando team has returned. All heavy firepower points have been controlled. The offense and defense have been changed, and the Dongfang Corps has completely captured Xiaoshianyuan village. Captain, hundreds of enemies fled into the jungle. We did not pursue them any further. Someone reported on the radio, and Chen Chen immediately replied, build a defensive line and hold on. There's no need to chase them. Clear. After a brief communication, Chen Chen turned to the captives who were squatting together. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear. Pure fear, without any anger mixed in. Yes, it's not that they don't want to be angry. Decades of construction were destroyed, and fires are still burning in the poppy fields. Those beautiful yet sinful plants that were supposed to be made into drugs were completely turned into ashes before they had time to undergo the most critical changes. That's their money and their lives. Who wouldn't be angry? But who dared to be angry? Their lives were now truly in the hands of others. The man who commanded this group of evil spirits stood there calmly drinking water as if he didn't care. But even so, no one had the thought of resisting. Because they knew that a heavy machine gun mounted close to the ground could kill 5 people with 1 bullet. Everyone was closely watching Chen Chen's movements. Even if he just waved his hand casually, it would cause a big commotion. Because the prisoners were afraid, that was a gesture of killing everyone. Has the perimeter been cleaned up? Chen Chen asked. It has basically been cleaned up, and there are 3 support groups with 150 people cleaning up the battlefield. Boom! As he was speaking, a sudden explosion was heard in the distance. Ga was stunned for a moment, then shouted angrily, "Idiot! Fuel air bombs cannot be used at close range. Quickly pull him back and see if he is dead or not." There was a noisy reply coming from the radio. Ga turned his head helplessly and continued to report. All buildings have been basically cleaned up, and the underground fortifications are now being cleaned up one by one. We won't fight them in indoor close combat. We don't have flamethrowers, but we found some gasoline and set it on fire. The real living devil. Chen Chen nodded slightly and replied, "The team is in your hands. Just take care of it. Where are the prisoners? Have you seen Nuakan? I didn't have time to distinguish them, but they are all here. We won't take in any of the ones that come later. We will kill them all. How many prisoners are there in total? I don't know. I don't know how to deal with it. Find Nuakong first. Chen Chen answered without hesitation. Then he raised his gun and without warning fired a burst of bullets at the prisoner's head. There was another commotion. Chen Chen shouted loudly. Look around you and find Nuakong for me. I only want him. Everyone else can go. I'll give you 10 seconds. If you can't find Nuakong within 10 seconds, open fire with your machine guns. As soon as these words fell, all the captives panicked. They immediately turned their heads to look at the people around them, trying to find the boss who they once respected so much. This will be their only chance to survive. Machine gun fire. In any other scenario, this sentence would sound like an exaggerated threat, but the prisoners knew that the man in front of them could really do it. He has killed so many. Is this all he needs? Don't disobey his orders. Don't exceed the time limit. Some people cried, some shouted frantically. Nuakong, Nuakong, come out, come out. Don't kill us. Don't force me. Zai is here. Zai is here. A dusty man was pushed out. Chen Chen nodded with satisfaction and said, very good. You come out and squat on the other side. You don't have to die anymore. In an instant, all the captives were in an uproar. One boss after another was reported, and in order to survive, these extremely evil drug dealers began to frantically attack their former colleagues. Chen Chen's heart was calm. He just shot away the elected leaders one by one that this sounded cruel and inhumane, just like voting for a bad student in the class. But in reality, the situation is completely different. Because if you choose a bad guy from a group of good people, the one you choose may very likely be an innocent person. But choosing bad guys from among the drug dealers? Each one is more damnable than the other. 10 minutes passed, and most of the leaders were killed, but Nakam still did not show up. Finally, one of the captives reacted and shouted, Nuakong has escaped. He has a tunnel. He has a tunnel. He must have run away. Chen Chen glanced at the man, waved at him, and said, you lead the way. The man rushed over without hesitation, his face full of eagerness. If you can be a guide, you don't have to die, right? Group 2, follow me. Jackal caught up with Chen Chen, and a few minutes later, they arrived at Nuakong's residence. A grenade blew up the cover of the tunnel and also detonated the booby trap that had been set up. Where does the tunnel lead to? Chen Chen asked. I really don't know where it leads to, but it must be outside the mountain. Then there is no need to chase. There are so many traps and forks in the road here. If you chase them in, you will die. Only the mentally retarded supporting characters in some movies could do such a stupid thing. Chen Chen sighed with some disappointment and said, he ran away. What a pity that he was not caught on the spot. The jackal nodded slightly and replied, it's impossible not to run. We don't know the exit of the secret passage, and we can't stop him. But isn't this also part of your plan? That's true. Chen Chen nodded slightly and then said, take everyone in chastely and set off with me. Starting from Xiaoshianyuan village, there are a total of 9 possible hiding places for Nakam. Let's sweep them one by one. With any luck, we can find him in his hiding spot. If he's unlucky, let him go find the 505th Brigade. Meanwhile, in Bangkok, in the command room of the Underwater Demolition Attack Force, the group was still discussing how to launch the beheading operation against Nakam. But just as the discussion became more heated, a violent and rapid knock on the door interrupted everyone. The commander opened the door of the command room with some dissatisfaction, and a communications guard appeared in front of him. Sir, urgent information. The guard saluted the commander with a serious expression and left immediately. The commander opened the sealed intelligence and read it impatiently. After a few seconds, his expression changed completely. He looked at the thin piece of paper in his hand in disbelief, then looked at the people in the command room who were looking at each other in bewilderment. Then he said, I think we can end our discussion here. Just receive the message. The campsite in Nuakong's Xiaoshianyuan village was destroyed. At least 400 people from Nakam's side were killed in the battle. Nuakong is finished. After the words were spoken, everyone froze in place. At this moment, they only had one thought in their minds. I haven't even started to make a move yet, and you've already killed me? Target number 1, Vasana Monastery. It is the closest to us and is most likely to be chosen by Nakam. There must be equipment and supplies he needs there. We may not be able to get there before him, but we can force him to give us clues about where he is going. We are now about 40 minutes away from the Vasana Monastery. Everyone, be prepared for battle. We may be attacked at any time. Clear. Everyone on the Predator answered in unison. Chen Chen, who was driving, nodded slightly and continued to stare at the path in front of him. In fact, he was so familiar with this route that he even had a sense of déjà vu. After all, in the previous life, he had carried out an exactly similar pursuit from the Vasana Zen Temple to Menglin to Bampiasi to Pekin, but that pursuit had failed. But what about this time? Chen Chen didn't think he would fail, because in this life, he had already broken free from all restraints. The only thing he had to do was to find Nuakong and kill him. Everything that stands in his way will be ruthlessly destroyed without any reasoning. The car continued to move forward, and Chen Chen said, Jackal, contact Zhao Jiaoyang of the 505th Brigade through Hebangxiong and ask him to prepare for feeding. Tell him that no matter whether I can catch Nuakong this time or not, as long as Nuakong doesn't go to his place, I will put this account on his head. Remember, your tone must be intense and unquestionable. Now, there's a tiger behind us. We must make good use of its power before the tiger leaves us. Clear. The jackal answered immediately, and Chen Chen turned to White Dog and said, White Dog, contact Prung Shuqing and spread the word. Anyone who dares to accept Nuakong will be killed without mercy. Remember, it's shoot on sight, kill anyone you see. Not to investigate afterwards, it's to kill anyone you see. Clear. The White Dog also nodded without any extra words. Like the jackal, when not in combat, he might be very talkative and have many ideas of his own, but now that he is on the battlefield, he has returned to his professionalism. He doesn't think about whether the order is reasonable or what the consequences will be. He only thinks about one thing: to execute the order. Thus, under such resolute and efficient operation, a series of actions that Chen Chen had planned long ago began to unfold. A terrible news quickly began to spread, and some people even used the TV station's connections to insert a scrolling subtitle during the 9 o'clock TV program. The Nakam group has been destroyed, and Nakam is on the run. Anyone who comes in contact with him will be considered an accomplice. There is no doubt that the message posted on the public platform will be much milder in its tone. But the emergence of this news itself represents something that cannot be questioned. Nuakang's living space has been compressed to the extreme, and the only road left in front of him is only a narrow strip. Chen Chen subconsciously reached down to his waist and touched his FN-57. He was thinking, if he happened to capture Nuakang alive, how should he kill him? Maybe sending him away with one shot is too cheap? Let's talk about it later. The speed of the Predator is still increasing. The performance of this mine-resistant ambush-proof vehicle has withstood the test of the roadside bombs placed by Nuakang. The glass on both sides of it is damaged, but the overall performance is still extremely strong. In 40 minutes, the convoy arrived at the Wisana Monastery, and the tire marks left on the wet ground undoubtedly proved the trajectory of Nakam's movements. Chen Chen opened the door and got out of the car without hesitation. Then he gave Li Bang a look. The latter understood what he meant and fired a stun grenade which landed in the main hall of the Zen temple. Assault. 1 minute to clear, 2 minutes to arrest, 2 minutes to interrogate. At Chen Chen's command, everyone raised their guns and moved forward. There might not be any armed enemies inside, but Chen Chen didn't care. Smoke bombs and stun grenades were thrown one after another, and in just 40 seconds, this small Zen temple was completely cleared. There were only monks inside, but ironically, when they caught the abbot of the temple, he was busy covering up number 4 under the floor of the meditation room. Chen Chen grabbed a bag of luggage and stuffed it into the side, then returned to the hall. The real culprit has been caught. This is definitely an important hiding place of Nong Kong. The abbot was brought in front of Chen Chen. Without any hesitation, he pulled out the FN-57 and pressed it against the abbot's forehead. I don't need a lot of information, I just need a direction. So, it's the same question no matter who you ask. Now, I'll give you 3 seconds to give me a direction. 3, I say. The abbot didn't make it to the second number because Chen Chen's eyes were too scary. Like Menglang Zen Temple, there is also a Shura statue in the main hall of Wisana Zen Temple, which should be an extremely majestic and terrifying existence. But after seeing Chen Chen's face, the abbot suddenly felt that nothing was more terrifying than the living person in front of him. The strong smell of blood and gunpowder on him, coupled with his fingers tightening immediately as he read the numbers, the abbot had no doubt that if he hesitated for half a second, or even couldn't finish counting the numbers, the gun would go off. Confession was the only option. They left half an hour ago. Nuakang is going to Menglan. He has a hidden ferry in Wakaka, and he will cross the river there. There will be a team of about 20 people there to support us. They have strong firepower and heavy machine guns. Bang! As soon as the words were spoken, a gunshot was heard. Chen Chen didn't even look at him, but gave the order directly. Wakaka Ferry, about 15 kilometers away in a straight line, there is a small road. Everyone get in the car. You must follow them. Not a second could be wasted, and the Dongfeng Corps evacuated quickly. Li Bang threw a stun grenade into the middle of the monks kneeling in the hall. This was certainly not out of some violent and malicious interest, but to prevent anyone from having any chance to shoot from behind. Then the convoy started again and rushed towards the Wakaka Ferry. The Dongfeng Corps is now half an hour behind Nuakang. I don't know what vehicles they are using, but no matter which one it is, it won't be much faster than the Predator. It may even be slower. The gap may be shortened to 25 minutes, but these 25 minutes are enough for Nuakang to destroy the ferry and all the boats crossing the river. Jackal also realized this problem, and he asked, "Is there any backup plan for crossing the river?" No, the Mekong River near Wakaka is very deep and wide, so we can only take the ferry. Besides, this place is too far from the Mengyu River where we docked, and the waterway is winding. It would take at least 2 hours for the boat to come here, which is not enough time, so I didn't make this arrangement from the beginning. But don't worry, since he took the Wakaka crossing, he is undoubtedly going to Menglan. At worst, we can abandon all vehicles and swim across. There's a small market near Wakaka. I don't believe I can't snatch a car. Clear. The Jackal didn't ask any more questions. In fact, he still had some doubts about stealing the car. But he also knew that in an emergency, one must take the necessary measures, and not everything must follow the rules. Because this is not Bangkok, Thailand, but northern Myanmar, the Golden Triangle. 20 minutes later, the convoy arrived near the Wakaka ferry. The Jackal saw from afar that a small ferry was approaching the shore on the other side of the river, but the distance between the two sides was too far, even more than 1,000 meters, and there was no time to intercept it. I saw Nuakang's car. There are only 4 followers. Prepare to cross the river. Chen Chen immediately gave the order, but just as he finished speaking, a series of white flowers burst out from the bulletproof glass of the Predator. Enemy contact. From the ferry direction. There are heavy machine guns. Jackal shouted loudly, and Chen Chen turned the steering wheel sharply, using the height difference of the road to avoid the firing range of the heavy machine gun. This car is not bulletproof. Its armor cannot withstand 12.7 millimeters heavy machine gun bullets. Pickup truck, move forward. Blast it. The maximum range of 19 Malawian kwaches is 2,000 meters, and the effective range is 1,500 meters. And now, they're only about 600 meters away from the ferry. There was a round of firepower coverage without any suspense, and the heavy machine guns set up at the ferry were almost silenced instantly. Chen Chen turned the steering wheel back to the right position and continued chasing towards the ferry. The grenades were almost used up with less than 10 shells left in both guns. But it was all worth it because all the obstacles in front of them had been cleared away. The warrior vehicle following at the end rushed up and completed the final harvest with the Type 85 heavy machine gun mounted on the vehicle, leaving the remaining armed drug dealers to flee in all directions, leaving an empty ferry. The boat was not blown up, but there was no ferry left. 2 speedboats can accommodate 8 people. Get on board! Chen Chen gave the order, and then everyone started rushing towards the speedboat. What the hell is going on? Chen Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Logically speaking, it would not be a good job for 8 people to chase an armed drug dealer who could constantly find cover. They could even lose their lives if they were not careful. But the people in Chasely seemed to be fighting like crazy. They were so excited that they didn't even consider the danger. The 8 of them rushed onto the boat, without even leaving a place for Chen Chen. Teams 1 and 2 will cross the river first. The others will find another way to cross the river. Contact by radio. Chen Chen made decisive arrangements. The personnel were quickly adjusted, and then 2 speedboats sped towards the other side. Nuakang's car had disappeared, and Chen Chen couldn't help feeling anxious. If he didn't go to Menglan but went directly across the jungle into Laos, it would be really difficult for me to catch him. Yes, the 505th Brigade still had its backup plan, and the boric acid pills had been thrown out, but if we could kill him today, why wait until tomorrow? With this mentality, Chen Chen drove the boat directly to the shore, then rushed to the ferry without stopping and snatched the pickup truck he had seen a long time ago. Someone will come to pay later, he shouted loudly. The owner of the pickup truck just stood there inexplicably. It was not until the white dog in the follow-up team actually took out money and stuffed it into his hand that he scratched his head as if waking up from a dream. In this world, instead of robbing, they are forcing people to buy and sell. The pursuit is still going on, and Ming Lin is right in front of him. This is actually a small village on the Laotian border. Although it is not part of Na Cam's drug production base, it is definitely an important stronghold. There are no armed personnel here, but there is a group of villagers who depend on him for survival. Chen Chen originally thought that the raid on this village would not encounter too many difficulties, and the worst that could happen would be a failure. But when the pickup truck drove to the entrance of Menglan village, when he saw the villagers holding hoes and machetes, he suddenly realized that things were beginning to develop in a direction that was completely beyond his expectations. Nong Kong is definitely in Menglan village, and these villagers wanted to use their innocent bodies to block the search of the Dongfeng Corps. Get out of the way! The jackal jumped out of the car and pointed his gun at the villagers in front. But his threats were useless. Instead of retreating, the villagers took a few steps forward. We're arresting the drug dealers. We're arresting Nakam. Get out of the way. If you don't, I'll shoot. The jackal spoke Lao. Just a few simple words, but enough to get by. But the problem was that no matter what he said, no one present listened to him. The machete had been raised, and the man holding the machete seemed to want to rush towards the jackal, but was immediately held back by the old man next to him. The old man scolded him a few words, and the man decisively dropped his knife. Then he walked forward recklessly, facing the muzzle of the jackal's gun, and continued forward. He was certain that the jackal would not dare to shoot, because they are ordinary people, not drug dealers. There has never been any drug trade in Menglan. This is just a refuge for Nuakong. Dead end. Not to mention that the Dongfeng Corps has no law enforcement power. Even if it did, they would not be able to get in, because these villagers won't reason with you. Money will give you money. The jackal continued to shout. The word money made the villagers quiet for a moment, but they soon realized that Nong Kong still had more money. The situation became increasingly tense. Looking at the two parties in confrontation, Chen Chen suddenly felt a little ironic. These villagers obviously did not hear the threats they had made, nor did they see the notice broadcast by the Myanmar TV station. They are ignorant and cannot distinguish between good and evil. They only want to protect their own interests, even if such interests are nourished at the cost of the flesh and blood of some innocent people. It's all the same. Chen Chen has encountered such situations too many times. Casinos, drugs, cyber fraud, and human trafficking. What kind of business doesn't have the so-called protection of the locals? But the irony is that even if you are on the side of justice, you can do nothing about this kind of protection. But fortunately, Chen Chen is not on the side of justice. He just needs to be the one to resolve the issue. So he pulled the jackal aside, walked forward, and asked in Lao, which was also not very fluent. Are you guys not letting me go? No, I won't let you in. No one can go in, unless you kill me. Okay, let's go then. Remember, we're gone. Chen Chen didn't say any more words. He waved his hand, and everyone turned and left. The pickup truck left the village and stopped at the corner. Chen Chen took out a mask from his luggage. Everyone began to imitate his actions, covering their faces with various objects. Everything was ready, and Chen Chen said, no Chinese. Remember, only English. The entrance of Menglan village. The old man rushed up angrily when he saw the Dongfeng Corps returning. He was speaking Lao in a babble and waving a hoe in his hands. How dare you come here? You are not allowed to enter. Kill me if you can, unless you. Bang! In response, a 5.56mm bullet hit his knee. At this moment, the old man was stunned. In fact, everyone was dumbfounded. After being stunned for a few seconds, he finally squeezed out a wailing sound from his throat. Ah! The boy who had thrown away the knife picked up the machete again. But before he could get close, Li Bang at the side broke his foot with a high-explosive bullet fired from the AA-12. At this moment, Chen Chen suddenly felt a little regretful. He had said that riot control bombs were useless, but now it seems that they are still useful occasionally. But to be honest, in the Golden Triangle, fake riot bombs may be more useful than real ones. Because the moment Li Bang opened fire, all the villagers ran away. They were afraid that they were not running fast enough, and that the bullets would catch up with them. and the bullets to catch up with them. The calves, ankles, and knees, they were all well-trained shooters. At such a close distance, using a rifle, even if they missed, they wouldn't be too far off. Nearly 100 villagers ran away without a trace. Chen Chen showed no mercy. Instead, he stepped on the old man's head and asked stiffly, "Nuakong, where are you?" The old man looked at Chen Chen in fear, with a hint of hesitation in his eyes. He seemed to want to take another gamble, betting that Chen Chen would not take his life. But because of these 2 seconds of hesitation, his other leg was crippled. "Ah, in the village. In the village. The tallest building. Wouldn't it have been over earlier?" Chen Chen complained in English, then kicked the boy next to him on the back of the head, sending him straight into a quality sleep. "Go ahead, tallest building. Li Bang, prepare your throwing objects. You will be the breakthrough player." "Clear." Li Bang did not question Chen Chen's orders. He was wearing a thick interceptor bulletproof vest and had long been accustomed to his role as a meat shield. In 30 seconds, the group of 8 arrived at the target building. This is a 3-story building. It looks extremely solid and must have been specially bulletproofed. Just as Chen Chen had said before, if he had a thermal imager, he would definitely throw smoke bombs all over the street. And now he is doing just that. Each member of the 8-member team threw at least 2 smoke bombs, and the entire building was completely hidden in the smoke. All the standard 4-eye night vision goggles were put on their faces. Yang Shu behind Li Bang used his M82A1 to smash the door lock with 1 shot, and then immediately switched to the 81 bar and retreated to the periphery to be on alert with the snipers of Group 2 led by Jackal. It is not that easy to open a door with a shotgun without using a breaching bullet, and in fact it is far less effective than a .50 round. After confirming that the door lock was broken, Li Bang kicked the door open. Then, Chen Chen and Jackal, who were standing outside the wall beside him, immediately threw stun grenades and smoke bombs into the room respectively. Absolutely standard CQB 6-person team breakthrough process. Li Bang stepped on a stun grenade and cut into the door. He killed the enemy lying in the dangerous corner on the left with 1 shot, while Chen Chen killed another one on the right. The number of remaining armed men in the room is unknown, but in fact no matter how many there are, this elite breakthrough team will not have any chance of counterattack. Gunshots rang out intermittently, and the enemies in the room opened fire, but from beginning to end, they failed to hit the right direction. Amidst the billowing smoke, the team broke through to the last room, a room sealed by a heavy steel door. "Nong Kong can only stay here." Chen Chen let out a long sigh. "In the end, I was blocked. You, the mouse, didn't run very far." Facing the door, Chen Chen said, "Nuakong, I'll give you 10 seconds to think about it. Open the door now. We have something to talk about. If you don't open it, you'll be hit by the fuel air bomb. We have fuel air explosives, and we brought them with us. Now, start the countdown." In fact, Chen Chen didn't bring it. They were all left to the 3 subsequent teams led by Go. But it doesn't matter because Nakam doesn't know. When Chen Chen counted down to 8, Nuakong opened the door. What greeted him was naturally a stun grenade that had been prepared long ago and a hard hit from the butt of a gun. Without any pause, Sang-Yi grabbed the thin Nuakong and carried him on his shoulders, then quickly evacuated with everyone else. When they stepped over the old man and the teenager who were still lying at the entrance of the village, the old man looked at them with only deep fear in his eyes. Half an hour later, all members of the pursuit team gathered together and returned to Myanmar on a speedboat. They had been targeted by the Laotian border guards, but after seeing the scary 19 Malawing Quaches and 85 heavy motorcycles on several vehicles, as well as the pursuit team members wearing heavy armor and advanced equipment, the other side decisively chose to retreat without even shouting a few words. So, Nakam was stuffed into the car and started to return with the pursuit team. It was not until this time that Chen Chen finally understood why Nuakong stopped in Minglan. His leg was cut by shrapnel, and although it had been simply bandaged, the wound still bled profusely. However, there was no need for Chen Chen to continue bandaging him, because he had no intention of keeping this man alive. "Who are you?" Nuakong asked with difficulty. "This is not something you should consider. Tell us the location of all your belongings. Hand over all your bank account numbers, passwords, and transfer methods, and buy your own life." Chen Chen replied indifferently. "How can I trust you? You have no choice. Die now, or live after this is said and done. Even if I tell you, you have no way to verify it. How can you guarantee my safety?" At this time, Nakam had completely lost his temperament as a drug lord. He was shaking all over and looked weak and ridiculous that in fact, he looked like this before he was executed. Are there really tycoons among drug lords? Some people always think that those who engage in this kind of illegal business have some tycoon temperament and are more or less related to the gangster boss personality imagined by some naive fools. But in fact, if he is really a tyrant, can he do this business? Don't be ridiculous. Where is the person like Lao Bai in real life? Not to mention other places in the Golden Triangle, anyone who touches drugs is basically useless because they can't do anything else, and because their brains can only support them to make a little money from this industry that is despised by everyone. What is the real gangster doing? Oh, interrogating a dying drug dealer. Looking at Nuakong's expression, Chen Chen suddenly felt a little disgusted. He said, "You have 10 seconds left to make a decision. Don't play tricks on me. I wiped out your team. No one dares to rescue you. Verification is only a matter of time. If you tell even one lie, I promise you will die in the most painful way. Now countdown." "I say." Nuakong spoke immediately. "White dog record. Clear." Half an hour later, Chen Chen got most of the information he wanted. He really couldn't verify the authenticity immediately, but he didn't really care too much. Tonight's operation is not over yet, and Nuakong still has many hiding places that have not been raided. That floating wealth alone was enough for him to make back his investment. The intangible assets brought about by the elimination of Nakam are of immeasurable value. Therefore, asking him to hand over all his property was just the icing on the cake. It's best to have it, but it doesn't matter if you don't. After recording the last sentence, Chen Chen nodded with satisfaction. Then he pulled out the pack of number 4 from the side of his luggage. He looked at Nuo Kong and said, "You've worked hard. Come on, take a few bites." Nuo Kong shook his head tiredly and helplessly. He had just given everything he had in exchange for his life. He probably thought that even if they were no longer friends, they were no longer enemies. After all, his death would mean nothing to them. On the contrary, being alive may create greater benefits for everyone. As a result, his tone became a little more relaxed. He replied, "No need, just help me bandage it. Take a bite, it's good for you." Chen Chen continued, "You can't eat it. This is pure number 4. Eating it will kill you." "I know." Chen Chen interrupted him. "Swallow it. All." Nuo Kong's already cold body was casually thrown on the side of the road. Chen Chen originally wanted to take it back as a proof, but after thinking about it carefully, he felt that it was unnecessary. Who are you showing it to? Who cares? To put it more extremely, whether Nakam is dead or alive is just a matter of a word from him. So forget it, it's better to just leave it here. If no one finds it, the rats in the mountains will eat it all up in a few days. It won't scare the kids either. Chen Chen let out a long sigh. At this moment, he finally felt that the turbid air in his heart had dissipated a little. One of the biggest drug dealers in the Golden Triangle has been killed by himself. Who'll be next? A long list of names went through his mind, and just as he was frowning and thinking, the jackal beside him suddenly said, "I thought you would take him back and let him face your judgment." Chen Chen was stunned for a moment, then replied, "First of all, it's not our trial. Secondly, some people can go to court, while others deserve only to go to heaven. Where are we going now? Straight back to Little Farm Village?" The jackal asked as he sat in the passenger seat of the Marauder. Chen Chen replied without hesitation, "Of course I won't go back. Old Pig is watching over there. They are all members of the Wood Ghost Corps, so basically nothing will go wrong. We have to clean up the points and lines that Nuo Kong provided. Otherwise, if we go too late and the news leaks out, his men will probably take action first. The first stop is Sanfu. He has a safe house there and 2 concubines. He should have a lot of money and property." "Bampiasi is not going?" asked the jackal. According to what Nuo Kong just said, Bampiasi is also an important stronghold, and it is quite large in scale. Theoretically, there should be a lot of money to be made. No, Bampiasi is actually a mobile camp and a planning base, and its nature is the same as that of Zio-Oceanian Village. However, in order to deal with our attack, Nakam has already withdrawn all his personnel to Zio-Oceanian Village. Most of Bampiasi's equipment and supplies must have been moved, so there is no way there would be much left. He emphasized this deliberately in order to disrupt our plans and buy himself some time. This person is still very cunning. Even at the last moment of his life, he is still playing tricks on us. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Jackal nodded thoughtfully. After a few seconds of silence, he suddenly said, "So you actually already got the intelligence a long time ago? You arrested him just to close the net." These are all the results of early manual reconnaissance. They are not that mysterious. Chen Chen was too lazy to explain more. Anyway, everyone now thought he was a black glove. Since he couldn't refute it, he would just do his duty as a black glove. Maybe if you become bigger in the future, you can get some kind of special status. The car drove forward and arrived near Sanfu in less than an hour. The remains of the last explosion were still faintly visible, and the shore was littered with the wreckage of various ships. When their convoy drove into the Sanfu city area as if no one was around, none of those eyes that were watching in the dark dared to step forward. They scattered in a hurry. They were afraid that this team would create another big explosion. The last time it happened on the water surface, but this time, they didn't know where it would happen. As a result, the Dongfeng Corps' mopping up operation went extremely smoothly. According to Nuo Kong's description, it didn't take the pursuit team long to find a safe house. Similar to Minglin's safe house, this is also a 3-story building, but because it is close to Dakali, it is easier to obtain various building materials, and this building is much more luxurious than Minglin's. Of course, it may also be because he has to support a concubine, so the living conditions cannot be too bad. There was nothing fancy about the combat process. A .50 was used to open the door, and smoke bombs and stun grenades were used. It took less than 2 minutes to clear all the rooms and gather the unarmed personnel in the rooms together. The 2 young women knelt on the ground and trembled. They had probably received the news of Nakam's demise. It was not known whether they still had illusions in their hearts or they simply had nowhere to go. In any case, they did not escape at the first moment, but chose to stay in the villa with a few bodyguards. This saved Chen Chen a lot of trouble. He was really worried that there would be no one in the villa after he arrived, and it would be really difficult for him to loot anything. Groups 3 and 4 searched the room, and Group 5 maintained perimeter security. Chen Chen immediately gave the order, then looked down at the 2 women and asked, "Where is Nuo Kong's safe?" The 2 women looked up at the same time, their eyes equally pitiful. "In the study upstairs. Sir, please let us go. We are also poor people." One of the curly-haired women answered, and the shoulder strap of her dress slipped down a little bit intentionally or unintentionally. Chen Chen remained calm and just gave a look to the white dog beside him. The latter understood what he meant and immediately led people to search the 3rd floor. "Besides his safe, is there anything else hidden in this building? You've been following him for so long, it's impossible that you didn't save anything, right? Jewelry, accessories, cash. Hand it all over, and I'll let you go." Chen Chen continued, "Sir, can I go with you? I was forced to do this. I wanted to run away a long time ago." The curly-haired woman stared at Chen Chen closely, her eyes revealing a mournful plea. This was indeed a way out for her, because they were originally dependent on Nuakong. Once Nuakong fell, they would lose their protection, and their fate would be even worse than Nuakong himself. When you want to live, someone won't let you live. When you want to die, someone won't let you die miserably, but that is none of Chen Chen's business. Saving lives is what the police are supposed to do, and they're only responsible for killing those who deserve to die. I can call the police for you. Chen Chen answered without hesitation. There was a hint of despair in the woman's eyes. After a long while, she finally said, "There is a secret door behind the dressing table. All my things are inside." Chen Chen nodded slightly, turned to another person and asked, "What about yours?" "All together. Go get it yourselves." The two women stood up, and after they turned around, Chen Chen quietly switched the speed selector of 416 Hong Kong dollars to full automatic mode. And just as he expected, after the dressing table was pushed open, the two women immediately reached into the space inside, trying to take something out. Bang, 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 416 Hong Kong dollars opened fire before them, and their hands were only half extended before falling down weakly. Li Bang moved the bodies of the two women away, took a look, and said, "Pistol? Really? What good can a drug dealer's woman have? To put it cruelly, if they were really forced, could they still be alive today? The bodyguards in the room would have killed them and run away with their stuff. They're clearly in the same group. Why are they pretending to be innocent? Bring all the valuables here and see what they have." Chen Chen gave the order again, and within 5 minutes, the entire villa was cleared out. Large amounts of cash, large amounts of gold, and large amounts of jewelry. There's a lot of floating wealth in this villa. According to preliminary estimates, the total value is at least over $3 million US. It paid off in one go. Chen Chen nodded in satisfaction and told everyone to start moving. Since there were no bags, I simply wrapped all my belongings in a bed sheet, tied a knot, put it on my back, and threw it into the back bed of the F-150 pickup truck. The raid was carried out quickly and cleanly from entry to evacuation. It took no more than 15 minutes. The next target will be the Huidong Steel office. Let's go to Wanbang to refuel first. The oil tanker was bombed, and I don't know if Wanbang still has oil. Why not go to Dakli first? The Jackal asked in surprise. There's no rush in Dakli. This is the territory of the 505th Brigade, and few people dare to take action. But Wishai is Xian Wanlong's territory. If we don't get there quickly, he'll eat it all up. We'll try to strike before he reacts, and then go to Dakli to reap the harvest. Clear. The Jackal has evolved, although he still has some different ideas about Chen Chen's orders now. As long as Chen Chen makes a decision, he will never question it a second time. That's strong leadership. The group set out again, and taking advantage of the night, the convoy refueled in Wanbang. The employees at the gas station were trembling with fear. They certainly did not recognize Chen Chen, but when they saw the two iconic F-150s falling into the hands of a force they were not familiar with, the truth of everything became clear. They filled up the gas for the convoy with trepidation. The white dog who was in charge of paying the bill muttered, "Why is it so expensive?" Which immediately scared them so much that they dared not say a word. Chen Chen on the side rolled his eyes and said, "What's so expensive about it? If it's expensive or not, look for the reason within yourself. Look for the reason within yourself." The only oil tanker was overturned, and the oil could only be brought in through a small road. In Wanbang, a relatively closed town, the oil price more than doubled. Baigo couldn't say anything more, and the convoy got ready to set off again. At this point in time, the Dakali-Wanbang-Sanfu highway had not yet been completed, so they were not traveling very fast, but it took them 20 minutes to reach the Golden Triangle Park port. Next, there are two ways to get to Huixai. Either go through Thailand or go through Laos. In theory, the Laos route would be relatively simpler because the inspection was not so strict, but there was a Jackal on the bus. He simply showed his ID, and the convoy passed through the port unimpeded. No one dared to make things difficult for him, and no one even questioned about the weapons in the car. A few staff members just pulled over some tarpaulins and helped cover the overly conspicuous 19 Malawian Quatches and 85 heavy motorcycles. With green lights all the way, the convoy drove straight to Huixai along Highway 1209. It took them less than an hour to travel more than 60 kilometers. After crossing the Thai-Laos Friendship Bridge again, the convoy arrived at its final destination, Huidong Steel Company. This is a shell company under Nuakong, mainly responsible for various illegal businesses other than drug trafficking. According to the intelligence Chen Chen himself has, and Nuakong's statement, there is a very huge cash reserve in the company's office. And this huge amount is in the tens of millions of US dollars. Chen Chen was actually quite skeptical about this statement at first, as he had two main doubts. First, Huixai is Xian Wanlong's territory. Even if Nuakong is not a mortal enemy, he is still a competitor. How could he store so much money here? Second, what does it mean to have tens of millions of cash? Just storing it is a problem. It doesn't sound reasonable, but when they actually saw the main building of the office and its location, Chen Chen's doubts immediately disappeared. It's nothing but collusion. This office is right next to the Wishai government building. How to fight? Chen Chen couldn't help but hesitate. It is certainly possible to rush in directly, but that will inevitably lead to a conflict. Once a conflict breaks out, as long as the Lao side responds, it will be difficult for us to evacuate smoothly. The subsequent troubles will be quite big. Of course, not the kind of troubles of life and death, but the troubles of exchanging interests. Chen Chen didn't want to expand his business too much, nor did he want to devote too much energy to it. So now he was forced into a contradictory situation. How? The Jackal on the side also saw the problem. This place was no longer within his territory where he had a say, so he didn't have any better solution. How about we just rush in, rob the house, and run away, then go back through Minglan? White Dog suggested, but it's not impossible. Let's use it as a last resort. Chen Chen replied with a frown. You must take the money here, because it is one of the biggest gains of this operation. But how to get it? Just when he was hesitating, there was a sudden movement at the door of the steel company's office. The door opened. A group of people carried box after box and threw them onto the pickup truck parked at the door. Are you going to withdraw? Impossible. This is the safest place. If we withdraw blindly, won't they give the enemy a chance? Wait. Chen Chen's eyes suddenly widened because he found that what was carried out were not only boxes, but also corpses. Damn. This is not Nuo Kang's people. This is Xian Ruanlong's people. They really took action first. After receiving the news that Nuo Kang's Xiaoxianyuan village was attacked, they immediately started the receiving work. Does this mean that they have already reached an agreement with Laos? Perfect. How do you say this, Wave? Delivery to your door. Seeing that the pickup truck at the door of the office had already started, and other armed vehicles also followed the guards, Chen Chen did not hesitate and immediately gave the order. Follow them. Stop them after leaving the core area of the government building. 10 minutes later, near the Mingseng 3-star hotel, the Dongfeng Corps' convoy stopped Xian Ruanlong's convoy on a small road. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone in Xian Ruanlong's convoy got off the car immediately and pointed their rifles and RPGs at the Dongfeng Corps' convoy. In their view, the Dongfeng Corps only had one fragile-looking armored vehicle, and they were not superior in numbers, so the two sides could fight. However, when the tarpaulin was lifted, the atmosphere suddenly became awkward when they saw the two black MK-19s on the pickup truck and the 85 heavy machine guns on the Warrior. The leading man put down his gun and walked towards the Dongfeng Corps. Then he spoke loudly. Where are these friends from? We are the subordinates of Commander Xian Wenlong. These things have been negotiated, and now they are being transported to designated locations for placement under the order of the Wishai municipal government. Did we have any misunderstanding? Is your friend from the military? Is there something wrong with the communication? Chen Chen did not answer, but just said, call Xian Ruanlong and ask him to talk to me. The leader was very tactful and immediately took out his cell phone and started dialing that. Of course, he was not really afraid of Chen Chen and his gang. No matter how strong their firepower was, this place would still be exposed to the sun. After all, it was Xian Ruanlong's territory. Even if the car is hijacked, can you escape? But if these people have a background, then you are doomed. If you offend a big shot, can you handle it yourself? If you're undecided, go to the boss. So, he handed the call to Chen Chen with a smile on his face, and Xian Ruanlong's angry question came from the microphone. Who is it? What do you want to do? Xian Ruanlong, I am a sunken ship. A sunken ship of the Dongfeng Corps. Silence. Silence is the sun tonight. This identity says it all. And the owner of this identity actually dared to chase him to Wishai without any scruples. In Xian Ruanlong's opinion, this meant something more terrifying. After a long time, Xian Ruanlong said, Oh, Mr. Shipwreck. The flood washed away the Dragon King Temple. You know, we worked together before. Do you remember? Your Excellency, are you forgetful? It's me, Xian Ruanlong. I was the one who sponsored the anti-drug campaign in Wanshi Village. Mr. Shipwreck, you don't have any impression of it at all, do you? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I firmly support the anti-drug campaign, the country, and the policies of all parties. These stolen goods are to be transported away, right? It's my fault. I didn't understand the situation. Well, Mr. Sinking Ship, you just drive the car away, and I'll take care of Laos. By the way, Mr. Shunchuan, do you want to stay and rest for a few days? I can show you our newly opened jade processing factory. My business is good, it's in great demand, it's profitable, and it's very legitimate. No need. Chen Chen interrupted Xian Ruanlong's chatter and said, I'll take the stuff away. You can figure out how to finish it yourself. After that, he stuffed the phone into the leader's hand and motioned Li Bang to drive. The little minions behind him tried to stop him, but the leader slapped them in the face and then asked with a big smile on his face. Sir, can you drive a manual transmission? Do you want me to send someone over? It's a bit troublesome to get through customs, but we can handle it. Then you follow me. Chen Chen answered immediately. The more times like this happen, the calmer we need to be, and the more we need to be fearless. Even if you were just a fox, you should act like you can kill your prey with one bite. Only in this way will others be afraid of you. So, under the escort of the team leader, the pickup truck loaded with stolen goods successfully crossed the border and drove over the Friendship Bridge. Chen Chen waved to the team leader who was still waving goodbye, then immediately got in the car and said, Go! Hurry up! What's the hurry? The jackal asked, puzzled. From the beginning to the end, he took Chen Chen's actions for granted and was not even surprised at all. Perhaps in his opinion, the matter should have been resolved in this way. Or in fact, it can be said that in the entire team, only Chen Chen himself felt guilty. He took a deep breath and replied, Nothing. I'm hungry. Let's drive faster and go to Tachalike for breakfast. Chen Chen said to have breakfast in Dakali, so he must have breakfast in Dakali. Moreover, it has to be eaten in front of the 505th Brigade. The reason is simple, just to make the most of his current advantage of being able to bully others and make Zhao Jiaoyang completely confused. In fact, objectively speaking, the Dongfeng Corps is still in a very dangerous situation. Its ammunition has been basically exhausted, and it has only 20 men. It has just experienced a great war and has made harsh words to all the forces in this land. It can be said that if any force covets the legacy left by Nakam and intends to compete head-on with the Dongfeng Corps for it, the Dongfeng Corps will immediately be put on the defensive, because it's really out of stock. But that's the problem. Does anyone dare to rob it? No. A mercenary group that emerged suddenly in half a year, a leader whose identity and background is a mystery or even impossible to find out, a group that won battles with fewer troops time and time again, and a big hand that beat Nuakong into pieces. These alone are enough to make many people imagine. Not to mention, during the operation, the assault team of this corps shuttled back and forth across the borders of Myanmar, Thailand, and Laos, completely disregarding the local official forces. Isn't this enough to illustrate the point? Of course, smooth border crossing can be achieved by any force with a little power. But again, it depends on the overall context. Therefore, during this night, the power of the Dongfeng Corps almost expanded to its limit. And this was what he had thought of before, the strategy of maximizing the power of the tiger by borrowing the power of the fox. It looked like a coincidence. It looked like going with the flow, but in fact, everything was under control, and Chen Chen himself was the hand rowing the boat. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the Dongfeng Corps pursuit team arrived in Dakali. After crossing the Friendship Bridge, they stopped the car directly in front of a restaurant not far from the government building. Everyone got out of the car, without even taking off their guns, and sat at the stall in front of the restaurant to order food. There were only a bunch of noodles for sale for breakfast, 1 bowl per person, needless to say. The boss seemed familiar with such scenes, and after serving the noodles honestly, he didn't bother us anymore. Dakali was still quite lively in the early morning. There were even many police officers walking on the street to maintain law and order, but they just took a few glances and left tactfully. Chen Chen said as he ate noodles. From the current situation, Zhao Jiaoyang from the 505th Brigade has not made a clear statement yet. He probably doesn't know that Nakam is dead yet, so he is still following the plan. However, now that we have shown up in Tachalike, our attitude has actually been made very clear. After this meal, if Zhao Jiaoyang still doesn't contact me, then we don't have to give him face. Nuakong's base here is the Regina Golf Course where we played last time. As an important base, they must have not evacuated yet. It's impossible to sneak in. We have to show our identity and purpose and rush in directly. Conflict is likely to occur, but the intensity of the conflict will definitely not be too high. When the time comes, we will directly use 19 Malawing Quachas to launch a wave of bombing to gain the upper hand and reduce the difficulty of breaking through. Clear. The Jackal and the White Dog nodded in unison. They seemed to be completely unaware of how risky it was to start a war on the territory of the 505th Brigade. Only 20 people facing thousands or even tens of thousands of Dakali defenders actually dared to say, charge in after bombing, which really showed that they were influenced by the bad company and were made bolder by Chen Chen. However, although it was said simply, in fact, Chen Chen's tactical considerations were very thorough. The golf course is originally located on the edge of the urban area of Tachalike, so it is very convenient to retreat via the Ban Poppy route that we took last time. At worst, we can just go to the Thai side. No matter how powerful Ren Zhao Jiaoyang is, he can't catch up with us. Of course, this is the last resort. Chen Chen still hoped that Zhao Jiaoyang could be more sensible and considerate and take the initiative to contact him. Now, we have been in Dakali for almost an hour. Anyway, he should have received the notification, right? What? Sleep? How could he sleep at a time like this? Chen Chen didn't believe that Zhao Jiaoyang would be so careless. But the problem was that until he finished eating the noodles, no one in the Dongfeng Corps received Zhao Jiaoyang's call. Chen Chen couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He checked the last of the ammunition, made a detailed ammunition management plan, and prepared for the final battle. But at this moment, a group of people in military uniforms came from the corner of the street. Summoned Jiaoyang. He came in person. Chen Chen did not stand up, but waved and asked for another bowl of noodles. When Zhao Jiaoyang walked up to him and sat down, the noodles arrived. Call the brigade commander. Sit down and eat. Chen Chen said with a smile. Zhao Jiaoyang was stunned for a moment, and he could no longer vent his dissatisfaction with Chen Chen for not standing up to greet him. Yes, they are eating. The world is so big. Just eat your fill first. So he also sat down and said, Mr. Shunchuan, I have released the news as you requested, waiting for Nuakong to take the bait. But since you guys came in with such fanfare, I'm afraid it won't be easy to catch him, right? Zhao Jiaoyang's tone was a little stiff, and his words also revealed a hint of calling for an explanation. More importantly, the guards he brought with him had not put down their guns until now, as if with just a gesture from him, they would shoot everyone present into pieces. But Chen Chen didn't move. He just put down his chopsticks and said kindly, it's okay. Nuakong is already dead. You don't need to worry about him anymore. Dead? Zhao Jiaoyang's hand, which had just picked up the chopsticks, stopped in midair. What the hell? I originally thought that I could use Nuakong as a bargaining chip to negotiate a good business deal with the man in front of me. After all, as one of the drug lords in the Golden Triangle, Nuakong has great power and interests. Even if you represent a giant force, you still need a suitable partner to help take over, right? As a result, after a night of not sleeping for a few hours, this drug lord who was entrenched in the Golden Triangle and once gave everyone a headache, just disappeared. He looked at Chen Chen in disbelief and continued to ask, Mr. Shunchuan, is he really dead? Why don't you go down and ask him yourself? Before Chen Chen could say anything, the jackal next to him spoke first. He was very dissatisfied with Zhao Jiaoyang's attitude, not only because of Zhao Jiaoyang's tone, but more because of the guns pointed at him. After hearing his words, Zhao Jiaoyang's guards immediately moved. But before they could say or do anything, all the Dongfeng Corps mercenaries who were squatting or sitting eating noodles on the streets suddenly stood up. It was not until this time that the sense of oppression of this powerful team that had just been tempered in blood and fire was completely released. They did not make any unnecessary movements, but just gripped their guns in unison. Yes, there is no loading action, because their guns were already loaded. Seeing this scene, the captain of the guards was about to shout back at him. He looked at Zhao Jiaoyang, wanted to seek his help, but Zhao Jiaoyang just shook his head gently. He knew better than anyone that he had made such a big fuss just to find a way to gain some benefits by taking shortcuts before the mystery of the identity of the shipwreck was completely revealed. But if I really have to do it, I definitely wouldn't dare to do it. And now, since Nongkong is dead, he no longer has any bargaining chips to trade, let alone the qualifications to trade with the sunken ship. So, he ignored the jackal's provocation and continued calmly. If he is really dead, Then we can take over his base in the city. Mr. Sinking Ship, should we discuss the distribution issue? After all, no discussion. Chen Chen answered without hesitation. You didn't participate in the operation, so you are not eligible to participate in the distribution. If you don't let me take the things from the Regina Hotel, I'll let someone who can take them take them. Think about it yourself. You must give me an answer before you finish this bowl of noodles. After hearing Chen Chen's words, Zhao Jiaoyang fell silent. He really didn't expect the other party's attitude to be so tough. Let those who can take it take it. This is indeed a serious threat. And combined with the various rumors that have been circulated before, he has reason to believe that the man in front of him really has such ability. The entire Golden Triangle has been turned upside down by him. Would he mind adding another thing to his fortune? Impossible. Advance when it is time to advance. Retreat when it is time to retreat. Thinking of this, Zhao Jiaoyang let out a long sigh and finally put on a gentle expression. In that case, let's follow Mr. Shipwreck's arrangements. I will send my men to go with you to the Regina Hotel to receive them. Like I said, our previous conflicts were all misunderstandings, and the 505th Brigade has already paid the price for them. If possible, I still hope that these things can end here. Can. Chen Chen answered simply, then stood up and said to the jackal, who was already unable to contain his emotions, put down your gun. You don't really think they dare to shoot? Chen Chen was quite ruthless when he said this in front of Zhao Jiaoyang. But Zhao Jiaoyang turned a deaf ear to him and just waved his hand, signaling his subordinates to put down their guns. A tense conflict was once again resolved into thin air. Chen Chen did not waste too much time. Instead, he took the people designated by Zhao Jiaoyang, got in the car, and headed straight for the Regina Hotel. Looking at his receding back, Zhao Jiaoyang frowned. His heart was filled with a deep sense of powerlessness. And along with this feeling of powerlessness, there was also a madly growing hatred. The Dongfeng Corps was not far from the Regina Hotel. After a 10-minute drive and 10 minutes of communication, all the remnants of Nuakong's men were controlled and gathered in the living room. At the beginning of the third 10 minutes, groups 3, 4, and 5 had already begun to sweep the entire building. Looking at this familiar building, Chen Chen couldn't help but feel emotional. It had not been long since they last raided the building, and there were even bullet holes on the building's outer walls. The jackals walked around the building as if on a pilgrimage, saying they were on guard, but in fact they were trying to find the secret of the Dongfeng Corps' exclusive tactics from the few remaining clues. There are too few bullet holes on the wall. Your team's resource efficiency is amazing, and basically no bullets are wasted. How do they train this? Even we may not be able to achieve such an effect. Walking back to Chen Chen, Jackal said with a little emotion, you can't possibly do it. You can shoot at a fixed target and miss it. We threw at least 10 stun grenades during that raid, not to mention the smoke bombs. Chen Chen answered casually, well, it's almost the same. White Dog, you participated in that raid. How did it feel? Forehead, the White Dog scratched his head and replied, it was smooth, just like shooting at a target range. Same feeling as me. The Jackal nodded in agreement and continued, I felt similarly about this round of fighting. Apart from the initial jungle battle, which was a bit tense, the subsequent battles were really like target practice. So the enemy's ability to resist was actually eliminated the moment the battle began, right? We are not fighting, we are just reaping. This is your style. Use a lot of projectiles in small-scale battles and give priority to firepower coverage in large-scale battles. No. Chen Chen shook his head and said seriously, if conditions permit, we will also provide fire coverage for small-scale battles. Understood. Jackal said no more. And at this moment, after a dull explosion, the voices of 3 groups of reports suddenly came from Chen Chen's headphones. Captain, we found the basement. I may need you to come over and take a look. There is someone in the basement. Someone. Chen Chen's brows immediately frowned. Who? He asked. I don't know. He has fainted. This secret room was not within the intelligence coverage. As a precaution, we threw stun grenades inside. Sorry, Captain. It's okay, well done. Chen Chen didn't hesitate and walked into the villa. It was located on the underground first floor. Under a lifted carpet, a pitch-black hole was revealed. Chen Chen climbed down the ladder to the basement. Under the floodlight of the tactical flashlight, the layout of the basement was clearly visible. There was no bed, no scary torture instruments. There was no light source and no daily necessities. It was just a basement, a bare basement. The woman lying on the ground had handcuffs on her right wrist, and her left hand had been smashed from the base of her hand to a bloody mess. She did it herself. Chen Chen couldn't help but grit his teeth. He searched around with a flashlight, and it didn't take him long to find a bloodstain on the wall. And on the bloodstains, there were obvious friction marks caused by metal objects. Her left hand was not broken by knocking, but by squeezing. In order to free himself from the handcuffs, with his hands handcuffed behind his back, he placed his right hand under his left hand and then used his body weight to crush the base of his left hand, breaking free from the handcuffs and giving himself a possible opportunity to fight back. Chen Chen had never even seen such an operation in a textbook. It only remains in the bragging of some old soldiers after drinking. And now, the living example was right before his eyes. Chen Chen squatted down, bent his knees, and pressed down the woman's still intact right hand, then began to feel around her body, trying to find clues that could prove her identity. But unfortunately, no. Take him out. Chen Chen hesitated for a moment and spoke. The group left the basement, or should it be the dungeon? With sufficient light, Chen Chen was finally able to see the woman's face clearly. Typical Asian face. Water. Chen Chen spoke briefly, and the open kettle was immediately handed to him. As a pot of water was poured down, the woman finally woke up. She did not look around in confusion as depicted in some TV dramas. Instead, she tried hard to fight the huge impact of the stun grenade on her cochlea, stumbling to get up and escape from the dangerous situation where she was surrounded. The broken left hand even left a bloody mark on the ground. Calm down. Calm down. We are not enemies, Chen Chen shouted. The woman looked at him warily, then at the others who were standing guard with guns, and asked hoarsely and tentatively, Comrade. When the woman said that word, all the questions that Chen Chen had previously puzzled about had a reasonable explanation. Why did the wind direction in the Golden Triangle suddenly change? Why did the tiger suddenly stand behind him? Why was Zhao Jiaoyang afraid? And especially why did Lian Eli say, we are still friends from the north? There really should have been a big action here. The purpose of the operation was definitely not to rescue this woman. On the contrary, this woman was an important role in the preliminary stages of the operation. It is very likely that because of her disappearance and the huge storm she caused in the Golden Triangle area, the operation that was originally under preparation was forced to be brought forward, and the news gradually spread, attracting the attention of various forces and creating those fears that seemed to come from nowhere. Judging from the timeline we know, it is indeed impossible for the schedule of the four-nation joint action to be advanced so much. But what if, by chance, I created the opportunity and the other side lost an important informant? No one can afford the loss of a large-scale collapse after the plan is leaked, so the only option is to take a more high-profile and radical approach. That's why the tiger showed up. It's not just here to stroll around, it's really setting its sights on its prey. However, its prey was killed by itself in advance. Looking at the woman in front of him, holding the kettle with her trembling right hand and swallowing greedily, Chen thought for a moment, then gave the order. Everyone leave the villa, I need to close the environment. No one raised any questions, and the team members tacitly took off their headphones, turned around, and walked out of the villa. In the empty lounge on the first floor below ground level, only Chen Chen and the woman were left. He asked, from high bow. The woman was visibly relieved at this question. She shook her head and replied, informant. This is a completely standard answer, because no one doing this job will admit their identity in front of anyone who is not their direct superior. When there are too many loopholes and it is certain that they cannot be concealed and they have to answer, they will only reply in the name of informant. This is the situation women are facing now. She was captured and then rescued by an unidentified, well-intentioned third party. Even a fool would know that her identity was not ordinary. If she insisted that she was an ignorant civilian, that would be the biggest joke. Only moderate honesty can gain you the chance of cooperation and survival. Chen Chen nodded and didn't ask any further questions. How were you caught? How dare they catch you? The woman finally drank the last sip of water in the kettle, and then replied, looking for intelligence, failed. The situation is complicated and they are also gambling. The woman's answer was very brief, probably because her voice had become completely hoarse due to long-term dehydration. But Chen Chen suddenly realized, got it. The Laotian equipment was stolen, so he complained to his father. I was wondering how Nakam could be so smart. He was in Dakali, but he had to guard against Bongxiong, who was far away. No wonder the Pamong battalion and Nakam set up an ambush near the Lovers' Hotel. It turns out that the source was not Bongxiong, but you. He sighed softly and asked, the information about the Pamong battalion, Nuakong, and the 505th Brigade? What that woman left behind? Jaya. Hearing this, the woman's eyes finally lit up. Which part are you from? That I am not from any unit. I am just a mercenary from Wa State. You still say that you are an informant? Would an informant do such a thing? How could a mercenary know so much? I'm just an informant, a Chinese overseas in Thailand. Okay, fine, let's not discuss this topic. Chen Chen waved his hands helplessly and continued. It's not surprising that I know more because Nakam has been defeated by us. Beheading? The woman sat up straight with such a sudden movement that she almost fell to the ground. Chen Chen subconsciously held her arm and then explained. The team was destroyed and the people were killed. As soon as these words were spoken, the woman's expression quickly changed from surprise to shock. His team was wiped out? Where did the fight take place? Xiaoshianyuan village? Who did it? How did they fight? Basically, they were defeated. It was the village of Xiaoshianyuan that started it. We fought it ourselves. We were a local mercenary group. How are you going to fight with just a dozen of you? The main force of more than 200 people is in Xiaoshianyuan village. That's not enough. Nuakong has cannons. A mercenary group? How is that possible? 107 fire coverage, 60 forced firing incendiary bombs, and fuel air explosive bombs to clear the area. Familiar, reasonable. Where's the Nuakong? Killed him and threw him away. You're not going to take it back? No, I told you I'm just a mercenary, just looking for money. The woman asked questions quickly and urgently, and Chen Chen was almost led into a ditch by her. Just from this one detail, Chen Chen could be sure that her identity was definitely not simple. How can ordinary people use interrogation techniques in normal communication? Are you kidding me? After hearing Chen Chen's answer, the woman seemed to have finally given up on further probing. She slowly leaned against the wall behind her and let out a long breath. I understand. What should I call you? What's the plan now? Where should I go? She asked. Every sentence carries a very high density of information. This way of communication really makes Chen Chen feel like he is back home. Just call me Shunchuan. The current plan is to raid the house and then return to the base in Munka. I don't care where you go. You should contact your superiors online. Can you hold on? When did your left hand get hurt? Are there any other injuries? The woman shook her head. I can't hold on any longer. I have to retreat. You need to protect me for at least 48 hours. My left hand needs surgery as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be useless. 2 ribs are broken, and there may be internal bleeding. Did they beat you? Chen Chen asked immediately. Lian Eli didn't dare. He was beaten after the replacement. Where is Lian Eli? Died about a month ago. But I was wondering why the players were suddenly replaced. The defense has been lax recently. Were you the ones who fired the gunshots that day? Yes, we were just trying to arrest people, and we didn't find the secret room. Why didn't they transfer you somewhere else? As soon as he said this, Chen Chen suddenly felt that it was unnecessary for him to ask this question. What happened after Lian Ilai died? The Mekong River exploded, Sang Kong died, Wang Mie died, then the Viper Squad was destroyed, Zhao Xianyuan village was gone, and even Nong Kong himself died. How could they have the chance to transfer? And how could they even care about transferring? But obviously, women don't know this. She replied, I don't know, maybe there's a special reason. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Come on, help me up. The extremely concise and efficient communication ended here. Chen Chen helped the woman stand up. The latter did not grab Chen Chen's hand, but grabbed the upper edge of the back of Chen Chen's bulletproof vest and placed her entire arm on Chen Chen's left shoulder. Damn, the training marks are too obvious. You still say you don't know martial arts? Chen Chen gave the woman a meaningful look, and the latter suddenly smiled and said, Your name is Shen Chuan, right? That's good. My name is Xiao Yu. But it's a very perfunctory name, which is your style. Chen Chen's tone was casual, but he knew that the fact that he could occupy such a common code name was enough to show the other party's specialness. The two walked out of the villa, and Chen Chen handed Xiao Yu to Bai Go. Then, he patted Jackal's shoulder, walked up to the drug dealers who were terrified by Xiao Yu's appearance, and said, Where are your guns? Do me a favor and get your guns. The drug dealers looked at him, tremblingly, and then looked at the soldiers of the 505th Brigade standing beside them. The latter turned his head without hesitation. They can't do very dirty work, but they're also happy to have someone help them do it. So, the 8 drug dealers fell down in unison after picking up their guns. Xiao Yu watched all this calmly, and when Chen Chen walked back to her side, she spoke. If you kill them all like this, some things won't be done. Don't tell me that everyone in the Nuakong group has the same fate. Is Wang Mie still alive? Where is Sang Kong? Unfortunately, they are all dead. When did your style become like this? I've already said that I'm a mercenary. I really am not a mercenary. Chen Chen spread his hands and said, Never mind these things, we have to retreat now. Although Zhao Jiaoyang certainly doesn't know of your existence, it doesn't rule out the possibility that there are other people in Dakali who are secretly watching you. If they launch an attack, we will be very passive. We have to find a place to restock our ammunition quickly. Refill the ammunition? The little fish widened his eyes. Then what? And then beat them to death. Li Bang, put a splint on her but don't bandage her. Contusion wounds have symptoms of infection, and bandaging will aggravate the infection. Rinse with alcohol, then give her a shot of penicillin. She's not allergic to penicillin, is she? In the Predator, Chen Chen was driving while giving quick instructions, while Li Bang in the back seat deftly opened the car's first aid kit and took out various items for Xiao Yu to use as an emergency measure. His movements were very skillful, but perhaps because he had been training with dummies for a long time, his blows were surprisingly heavy. Xiao Yu frowned and remained silent. When Li Bang had finished handling everything, the car had already left Dakali along the scheduled Bampapi route. After confirming that it was basically safe, Chen Chen said to Xiao Yu, I suggest you contact your superiors right now to determine the follow-up plan. If they arrange an evacuation point for you, if it's in a reasonable location, I'll take you directly there. But if they can't meet us in time, you will come with us and withdraw to Munka first, and then let them meet us in Munka. This is a solution that benefits both of us. It can ensure your safety to the greatest extent while taking our plans into consideration. Well, do you agree? Hearing his words, Xiao Yu nodded without hesitation and then replied, I agree, but I have to make a phone call first. White Dog, give her the satellite phone. Chen Chen said. Bai Go immediately pulled out a satellite phone from his waist, and after answering the call, Xiao Yu asked again, Can I fight here? The meaning of this question is very clear. That is, are everyone here one of us? Chen Chen's answer was also quite artistic. The signal in the car is very poor. Let's park on the hillside and call. Clear. The two of them were like comrades who had known each other and cooperated for many years. Their tacit understanding was innate and did not require any further communication. After going up the hill, Chen Chen stopped the car, got out, and stood guard with a gun, while Xiao Yu dialed a number that she would never forget. She avoided other people, but not Chen Chen. The call was quickly connected. She took a deep breath and said, Dad, it's Xiao Yu. There was silence on the other end of the phone for several seconds, and then a man's voice came over. Xiao Yu, why are you calling so early? Have you had breakfast? Have eaten. The little fish replied. It's okay after you eat. Take care of yourself. What's wrong? Are you short of money again? Enough to spend. Xiao Yu tried hard to suppress her emotions, but no matter how strong she was, her voice trembled a little at this moment. The man on the other end's voice also had a barely perceptible instability, but he was still diligently carrying out the procedure. If it's not enough, tell me. Don't let yourself suffer outside. I'll transfer some more money to you later. Is 5,000 yuan enough? It's too much. I'm alone and can't spend that much. Following Xiao Yu's answer, the voice on the other end of the phone disappeared again. But soon, a deeper and deeper male voice came again. Xiao Yu, report the situation and location. Xiao Yu let out a long sigh, and then replied, I was captured by Nakam and detained in the Regina Hotel. We were rescued by reinforcements, but the reinforcements were of special status. I am safe now near Bampapi. Nuakong confirmed his death. Sangkong, Wang Mie, and Lian, he came to confirm his death. We already know that. The man's tone relaxed a little. It was obvious that they had obtained the intelligence before Xiao Yu. No matter how they obtained it, the matching of the intelligence from both sides had already proved Xiao Yu's credibility to a large extent, even though she disappeared for so long. Of course, from another perspective, there is another more important reason, which is Xiao Yu was originally going for Nuakong, and now Nuakong is dead. No matter how much of a role she played in it, doesn't that make the point? So he continued, if possible, you should leave your current team and head to Huaizai. We will meet you there and arrive within 24 hours. Zhao Jiaoyang cannot be trusted. His position is very unstable. You need to stay away from him as soon as possible. The man seemed to think that the reinforcements Xiaoyu mentioned were Zhao Jiaoyang, but Xiaoyu's answer was beyond his expectations. The reinforcements were not the 505th Brigade, but a mercenary group that claimed to have planned the operation against Nakam. Dongfeng Corps, got it, we are paying attention. The man's voice remained calm. Chen Chen's kill order was sent throughout northern Myanmar. It would be the biggest dereliction of duty if he couldn't say the name Dongfeng Corps. They are generally well-intentioned, but the identities of their core members and their logic of action are very strange. Can you leave? If you can leave first. Xiaoyu didn't answer immediately, but looked at Chen Chen and asked, can you take me to Huizhai? How long do you need to wait there? 24 hours. No, we can't stay in Huizhai for too long. We have to leave immediately after dropping you off. You will be completely alone for 24 hours. Unless support is waiting for you, I don't recommend you to separate from us. Believe me, it's much safer to stay with us than to wait for support anywhere else by yourself. Chen Chen answered immediately. He could actually go to Huizhai again and even protect the little fish for 24 hours until the rescue team arrived. But there's a prerequisite for doing this. That is, Xiaoyu must reveal his identity in front of everyone. But how is this possible? Under the premise of not revealing your identity, it is extremely risky to go to Huizhai again. The routine of using the power of the tiger to bully others can only be used once. The more you use it, the more loopholes there will be. Do you really think that the enemies are all fools? Or another way, Big Brother is willing to give him a special identity now. But the problem is that they are a mercenary group in northern Myanmar. Killing Nakam alone is not enough to wash away their original sin. They're not even sure of their real motives. Who knows if you want to kill him and become bigger? If so, how can Big Brother judge you so easily? Oh, can the problem be solved by saying something ambiguous like, this is our business partner. Please go to Huizhai to handle the relevant formalities? Only those who have truly received such a judgment know how heavy this judgment is. Because it doesn't matter what is said. What matters is who says it for whom. So all in all, he couldn't take risks for Xiaoyu, nor could he let her take risks on her own. Hearing his words, Xiaoyu nodded and turned to the man on the phone and said, I am injured and my mobility is very poor. It is too risky to stay in Huizhai alone. I plan to go to Mungka first. Can you meet me in Mungka? I'll go and communicate. I'll hold on for 48 hours. Are there any medical conditions? The man's speech speed increased a bit. He knew that if Xiaoyu said that he was injured, it must mean that the injury was serious. Xiaoyu looked at Chen Chen and asked, any medical conditions? Yes, you can go to Mingbin first. Chen Chen replied. Xiaoyu nodded and said to the phone, go to Mingbin for medical treatment first, and then go to Mungka to wait for support. Good. The man agreed immediately, and after a pause, he continued, the road to Mungka is not completely safe. We will not be able to rescue you in time. Whoever is next to you, let him save your life. Tell him that as long as you are alive, we can pay. Clear. Xiaoyu answered briefly, completed the final confirmation, and hung up the phone. Then she turned to Chen Chen, relayed her superior's words, and continued. Without quick support, and without being able to go to the 505th Brigade, I really can only rely on you now. That's normal. Chen Chen replied indifferently. In fact, let alone the present time point of 2010. Even if it were a dozen years later, faced with this situation, it would be impossible for a divine soldier to descend from heaven to help them completely solve their worries. It's not a question of if you can do it, but a question of whether you can do it. Therefore, he never placed his hopes on Xiaoyu or the person behind her. A blacksmith must be strong himself and must rely on himself. Just as he said, being with him is the safest. If someone really dares to come, I will rely on myself and the gun in my hand to defeat them all. Maybe there are really a lot of enemies, but my fuel air bombs are not necessarily any disadvantage. Get in the car. Chen Chen spoke decisively, and Xiaoyu got into the car without hesitation. But the moment she raised her legs, her whole body suddenly went limp and she fell straight to the ground. Chen Chen immediately reached out to help her up, but Xiaoyu struggled to sit up again. I'm fine, she spoke. My chest hurts and feels stuffy. It could be a pneumothorax. We have to go quickly. But don't worry too much, he won't die for the time being. The situation took a turn for the worse. Although Xiaoyu said that he was fine, he fell into a coma just a few minutes after getting in the car. Chen Chen didn't expect that the biggest threat to Xiaoyu's life was not the external enemy, but her own injuries. It seems that her casual remark of, I was beaten after the change of personnel, is not that simple at all. Thinking of what she said about 2 broken ribs, Chen Chen immediately felt extremely uneasy. Her symptoms were not what she called internal bleeding at all. Instead, they were almost identical to tension pneumothorax. This can be said to be one of the most serious consequences of a broken rib. The broken rib punctures the lung, causing an alveolar leak, in which air enters the pleural cavity and is unable to escape. The accumulated air exerts pressure on the pleural cavity, causing a large portion of the affected lung to collapse. Pain and blood loss are minor issues. What is more serious is that this pressure can cause the heart and large blood vessels to shift, affecting the function of the heart and lungs, leading to severe breathing difficulties, circulatory failure, and even death. Chen Chen frowned. If that was true, he would probably have to give Xiaoyu a hell of a life. The fish's chest must be pierced with a needle to urgently release the air in the pleural cavity to relieve pressure and restore normal heart and lung function. The operation was difficult and would cause great pain without anesthesia, but he had no choice. Chen Chen took a deep breath, helped Xiaoyu sit up, quickly stripped off her bulletproof vest, then put his ear close to her back, trying to judge the severity of the pneumothorax by the sound of her breathing. He was very nervous because he was really afraid that the first real comrade he met in northern Myanmar would die in front of him. Fortunately, after listening to her from behind, Chen Chen found that her condition was better than he had imagined. The breath sounds are faint, but still clear. This shows that her lung was indeed punctured, but perhaps because of her good physical condition or because the wound was relatively small, the closed pneumothorax had not yet developed into a tension pneumothorax, and her lungs were still working normally. Just as Xiaoyu said, I won't die for the time being. The current coma is most likely a complex reaction caused by multiple factors, including severe malnutrition and physical overdraft. But this doesn't mean that the problem is not big, because this temporary is measured in hours. Chen Chen frowned. He knew very well that if Xiaoyu's symptoms were allowed to continue to develop without timely treatment, even if she was sent back to the north, she might not be able to be saved. In order to solve her problem, and without leaving her in the dangerous Dakali, she had to be transferred to Mengbin as soon as possible so that the doctor could evaluate whether to perform a thoracotomy or a professional chest aspiration. Time is life, and at this moment, it is truly reflected to the fullest. Chen Chen did not hesitate. He chose the route decisively. The principle of choosing a route was to avoid all conflicts and unnecessary interference. There is no need to go to Xiaoxianyuan village for the time being. Just let Lao Zhu stay there to defend and wait for subsequent reception. The pursuit team will return to Mengbin first with the captured spoils. The convoy turned and drove onto the Tangi Dakalai highway. After passing a small road, Chen Chen bypassed the most likely ambush location and drove directly onto the NH4 highway. The performance of the Predator was squeezed to the limit. On the flat road, the car reached a speed of 90 kilometers per hour. For such a heavy mine-resistant ambush-proof vehicle, this speed will probably not appear many times in its long life. Fortunately, the convoy did not encounter any accidents. Chen Chen carefully controlled every turn and every road choice, avoiding all checkpoints controlled by the Burmese army. In just less than 3 hours, the convoy arrived near Jingdong. At this time, Xiaoyu also woke up from his coma. She subconsciously turned over. The severe pain in her chest and lungs almost distorted her face. She coughed violently a few times, and Xiaoyu spat out a mouthful of blood. Li Bang handed over a piece of gauze. Xiaoyu wiped his mouth casually and asked, "Where are we going now?" "Jingdong. We can go directly from Jingdong to Mengbin. This is the fastest route." Xiaoyu was stunned when she heard Chen Chen's answer. "Not going to Xiaoxianyuan village? Didn't you say you were going to receive the spoils?" Chen Chen couldn't help but roll his eyes. "You're almost dead. You know that? You have a severe pneumothorax. Why would you care about the spoils? To put it bluntly, you can only hold out for 10 hours at most. If something unexpected happens during this time, I will have to perform a chest incision and release the air without anesthesia. Don't you have any training to resist blows? How could such an important area as the chest not be given priority for protection?" "Brother, my hands are cuffed behind my back." Xiaoyu spat out a mouthful of blood foam. Her hair, soaked with cold sweat, stuck to her face, which set off her bloodless face and made her look extremely terrifying. Her body had begun to suffer from hypothermia, which was the initial manifestation of typical circulatory collapse shock. There was no way to give her a blood transfusion or perform any first aid on the spot, because with the severe increase in the burden on her heart, blind operations might actually cause her to die faster. "We can only wait until her chest can no longer hold on, and then open her chest to release the air." Chen Chen glanced at her through the rearview mirror and continued, "Let me teach you a trick. Without using your hands to block, you can use chest breathing to expand your lungs as much as possible. The alveoli will provide elasticity and cushioning for the bones, minimizing fractures. Even if it does break, the probability of damage to the alveoli will be greatly reduced." "What kind of weird martial arts?" "Bajiquin, you know nothing. Stop talking and lie down. Every extra word you say will cost you 1 minute less." Chen Chen didn't want to pay any more attention to Xiaoyu, and Xiaoyu slowly leaned back on the chair. Bai Go and Li Bang at the side immediately made way and helped her body lie flat on the ground. Her breathing began to become rapid, and her condition deteriorated rapidly. It was very likely that her violent struggle at the Regina Hotel had aggravated her injuries. Looking at her rising and falling chest, Li Bang asked for help. "Captain, what should we do?" "You drive." Chen Chen stepped on the brakes without hesitation, and then quickly switched positions with Li Bang. He straddled Xiaoyu and tore open the clothes on her chest, then lay down and carefully pressed the skin on her chest. "Without x-rays, we can only determine the location of alveolar leakage by the elasticity of the lungs and the chest. Generally speaking, pneumothorax puncture is performed from the upper part, but in some special cases, due to adhesions in the chest cavity, gas may also accumulate in the lower part." Chen Chen had to confirm it because this was a detail that absolutely could not be wrong. So you didn't pay any attention to his actions, but suddenly said in a daze, "Shipwreck, find me a gun. I saw an armed checkpoint before." Chen Chen paused, his hands moving continuously to disinfect the syringe with alcohol, and then began to wipe the fish's skin with alcohol. As he wiped it, he answered, "There is an MP5K that you can use first. It is the only thing you can lift right now. But your bulletproof vest is level 2, which is better than nothing. I don't recommend you to go into battle directly. If a fight really breaks out, just find a place to hide." The bulletproof vest that Xiaoyu took off was taken from the body of the drug dealer Regina. It was not at the same level as the bulletproof vest worn by the Dongfang Corps. Not to mention the flying machine gun bullets in a high-intensity conflict. Even the most ordinary Type 81 rifle could easily penetrate it. But of course, Chen Chen was not arguing with her about the allocation of tactical positions. He just wanted to maintain communication with Xiaoyu to prevent her from fainting. "Okay, I'll hide myself," Xiaoyu answered with difficulty, and then continued to ask, "What's the route now?" "To Xiaoxianyuan village." Xiaoyu's mind has become confused, and insufficient heart pumping has begun to affect blood supply to the brain. She didn't remember what she said, nor what others answered. Due to the lack of oxygen in her brain, her thinking ability was reduced to the limit. In a sense, her words and actions are even controlled by instinct. If this state continues for more than 10 minutes, she will inevitably enter a state of circulatory failure. By then, there will be no way to rescue him. Chen Chen's hand holding the needle was extremely steady. He gave the jackal and the white dog a look, and the two immediately understood what he meant and stepped forward to hold Xiaoyu's shoulders and arms. He continued to answer, "Go to Mengbin, not Xiaoxianyuan village. There is nothing in Xiaoxianyuan village that can save your life. Shut your mouth, I'm going to give you the needle." Hearing his words, Xiaoyu blinked. Chen Chen took a deep breath and positioned the needle at the appropriate position on the midclavicular line in the upper chest, carefully avoiding the ribs and arteries, and then slowly pushed it in. Xiaoyu frowned immediately, but the intense pain seemed to make her sober up a little. She opened her mouth and asked, "How did Kong die?" "They chased us to the Wangnamfu River and the Mekong River, where we ambushed and killed them. 10 against 300. This is a tactic you Marines will never learn." Chen Chen's hand pulled the piston of the syringe steadily. After making sure that what was drawn out was blood foam, mixed with air instead of fresh blood, he simply pulled out the piston and connected the syringe to Xiaoyu's chest cavity. Under the huge pressure, gas and blood foam sprayed directly onto Chen Chen's face. He raised his hand to wipe it off casually, and then immediately covered the upper edge of the syringe with gauze. The chest pressure dropped suddenly, and within just a few seconds, Xiaoyu's face regained a hint of color. It was like a last gasp. She lowered her head and looked at the syringe stuck in her chest, then continued, "First of all, I'm an informant, a Thai Chinese. Secondly, why did Kong want to hunt you down? Because we blew up his fleet. There was a huge explosion. How big is it?" Xiaoyu's breathing became rapid again. But this was completely different from the shortness of breath caused by tension pneumothorax before. It was due to air leakage caused by damage to the chest cavity and lungs. The oil tanker exploded, destroying more than a dozen ships and causing more than 100 direct casualties. But they were all drug dealers. Okay. Xiaoyu closed her eyes, and her hands kept shaking. She really didn't have the strength to speak anymore. In just a few seconds, she fell into coma again. Chen Chen calmly reached out and touched her carotid artery, silently counting to 30 seconds. And only after he was sure that her heart rate had returned to a basically normal level did he finally breathe a sigh of relief. His life was saved temporarily. However, his life was saved only when a tension pneumothorax broke out. The danger is far from over, and chest wall penetration is not a way to save lives, but a stopgap measure. Because the danger of open pneumothorax is no less than that of tension pneumothorax. If tension pneumothorax is a slow accumulation and sudden outbreak, then open pneumothorax is a complete chronic asphyxia. It can delay death, but it cannot eliminate it. Pleural patch. Chen Chen reached out his hand to Li Bang, who immediately tore open the patch in the first aid kit and handed it to him. Chen Chen pressed Xiaoyu's chest slightly, squeezed out the excess air in the chest cavity, pulled out the needle, and quickly put the pleural patch on. He placed his hand on Xiaoyu's chest, feeling the rise and fall of the latter's chest. Still weak, but at least it's within normal range. He knew this was not the end. The deflation and sealing operations will continue in a cycle until reaching Mengbin, until the hospital can give her professional treatment. Chen Chen quickly glanced out of the car window, then said to Bai Go, "Contact He Bongxiong and ask him to negotiate with the Burmese side to let us pass. Tell him that no matter whether it can be done or not, he must inform me immediately. I must have a backup plan. Jackal, you have had contact with the Burmese army. Try to contact them and see if there is any way to talk to them. We have a lot of cash, and if we can buy our way with money, we'll spend it. Right now, keeping this woman alive is our top priority. As long as she lives, all of us will be able to make more than just a fortune. Clear." The jackal and the white dog answered immediately, and at this time, the convoy had completely entered the Jingdong area. Less than 10 kilometers away from the urban area, the Myanmar military's control became increasingly strict with checkpoints one after another, and the convoy could finally no longer escape. The looters stopped not far from the checkpoint, and the Burmese army rushed forward, aiming their heavy machine guns at this convoy that was so well equipped that it was a bit exaggerated. Xiaoyu was awakened by a series of shouting, and she saw the people around her getting out of the car one by one. She realized that things had changed, or rather, she realized the crisis that was happening. So she struggled to sit up, reached out and picked up the bulletproof vest on the ground and put it on. Then, she found the MP5K that had been mentioned in her vague memory and held it in her hand with difficulty. She had no intention of getting off the car, because even though her consciousness was almost completely dispersed, she knew clearly that if she appeared on the battlefield now, she would be a pure burden and flaw. She just wanted to make the most of it, but she soon fainted again. The last thing she saw before her vision went completely black was a face with a mask on. Mengbin Government Public Hospital. Xiaoyu was lying on the hospital bed. She had basically recovered after the operation. She now looked the same as when Chen Chen first saw her. Although she was still weak and tired, at least there was no longer that scary, deathly look on her face. The operation was very successful. In fact, as long as a hemothorax operation is performed in a well-equipped hospital, it should not be a big problem to do it well. Her left hand was relatively troublesome. The bones of her thumb and index finger were all broken, and her wrist bones were displaced and fractured in many places. It took the doctor a lot of time just to put her hand back in place. Fortunately, there was basically no major damage to the tendons and nerves. Otherwise, with the medical conditions in Munka, one hand would have been really useless. She stretched her slightly stiff waist, looked at Chen Chen, who had just walked into the ward and stood in front of the window, deep in thought, and asked in a slightly hoarse voice, "So how did you get through Jingdong? I remember that you seemed to have started fighting before I fainted." Hearing her words, Chen Chen turned around and shook his head, and replied, "No. How could we start a fight? The enemy is the government army, and we are a regular mercenary group. Do we look like the kind of people who would start a fight at the slightest provocation? Then why do you wear a mask? It's just a habit. Anyway, my mission has been accomplished. When you arrive in Mengbin, someone will come to pick you up in 48, to be exact, 36 hours. I remember you said that as long as you are alive, your superiors will pay. How much are you willing to pay? It cost me a lot to save your life." Siyu laughed, haha, and then said, "Didn't you take interrogation classes?" Deliberate emphasis is often just to cover up the truth. You may really want money, but don't you think it seems too urgent and untrue to bring it up at this time? Although I don't know who you are, I can be sure that you are definitely not a mercenary who only wants money. Whatever you say is what it is. Chen Chen shook his head helplessly, and then continued, "But I'm afraid my identity is really different from what you imagined. I can't prove it, and you can't disprove it. It may take a long time before you can accept this fact. It doesn't matter. I won't ask any more questions." Xiaoyu had an 4 in her right hand, so she could only gently move her bandaged left hand, which looked a little funny. "Then let's not talk about that. Let's talk about something we can talk about. I remember in the car, you said that you defeated 300 people with only 10 people in a river somewhere, and blew up a fleet of Sangkong. To be honest, I thought I had misheard at the time. After all, I was not in a clear mind. So now, can you tell me, is this real, or is it my hallucination?" "It's true," Chen Chen answered without hesitation. "How did you do that? Which part? Blowing up the ship, or 10 versus 300? Let's start with the bombing of the ship. There's nothing much to say. A tanker was made into a big bomb, and it was driven near Sanfu and detonated. That's it. What about 10 versus 300? There's nothing much to say. We shot down Sangkang's helicopter, set fire to a river island, blocked the enemy's ground forces, and then destroyed 4 ships on the water." Hearing these words, Xiaoyu couldn't help but be stunned. This man, whether from the details of his speech, the granularity of the intelligence he possesses, or his attitude towards himself and the general direction of cracking down on drug dealers, is undoubtedly an insider. But the problem is, in my impression, none of my people would do things like him. What the hell is the burning of the river island? What the hell is the big explosion? Oh, the explosion was probably for a card rush. But why were you stopped in Sanfu? Xiaoyu asked suddenly. "We seized the assault boat of the 505th Brigade's Zhao Jiaoyang, and he sent Nuakong to stop us." "Jianglong? Did you get it back?" "It's not that we took it back, it's that we own it," Chen Chen corrected. "Same idea. How did you rob it? Steal it?" "No, he was parked at Lock Wharf, we called him, and then we drove away." Chen Chen spoke very briefly, as if the whole process was really so easy and carefree. However, Xiuyu, who was very familiar with the information in this area, was confused. "Zhao Jiaoyang deployed an armored company near Lock Wharf, right next to the Friendship Bridge. How did you get away?" "Just knock out the armored vehicle. It has light armor and is very fragile." "But that's an assault gun. That's also pretty crisp." Xiaoyu was completely silent. The awkward atmosphere gradually spread. After a few seconds of silence, Xiaoyu asked again, "Where's 19 Malawing Quatches? Wasn't it also stolen from the 505th Brigade?" "Don't go too far. Zhao Jiaoyang is still valuable at the moment. He wants autonomy, but it doesn't matter. 19 Malawian Quatches belongs to Nakam, and he Bongxiong will definitely be the one in power in the future." "What did you do?" "I really didn't do anything. He got hold of the 505th Brigade's handle, and then things turn out like this. And it's all in the past. It's useless for you to disagree." The Bao family didn't respond. "The Bao family is still on our side at the moment. I mean on the side of our Dongfeng Corps." "Understood." At this moment, Xiaoyu finally completed all the missing information during the time she was captured. And she became more and more convinced that the man in front of her was really one of their own, because everything he did was completely in line with the interests of their own people. I can finally rest assured. During the more than 1 month in the dungeon, she was constantly facing the dual torture of mind and body. The completely dark environment was enough to destroy everyone's will. If it weren't for the unquenchable fire in her heart, she would probably have collapsed when she saw the light of day again. She was worried all the time that her own mistakes would lead to the failure of the entire operation in northern Myanmar and the situation getting out of control. In fact, such a risk does exist, and the balance almost tilted. She relied on her backup, but she never thought of relying solely on backup. Her broken left hand was proof of her desperate struggle. But in the end, what she faced was a great victory. It's like being knocked unconscious by a shell on the battlefield, waking up to find yourself in a field hospital, while your teammates have already started drinking Maodai and having a bonfire party. Did you feel lost? Not really. Victory is never the result of personal heroism. Saturation action is the best choice to ensure safety. It's really great now. As long as we wait for the support personnel to arrive, everything will be over. No matter who this man is, since he doesn't want to say it or can't say it, then forget it. What does it matter? If a person behaves like one of our own, speaks like one of our own, and does things that are in the interests of our own, then he is one of our own. At least for frontline personnel like me, this must be the case. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on her face. Then she said, "If you don't want to talk about anything else, forget it. I should at least know how you passed the test, right? This is closely related to our subsequent disposal plan. If you don't tell me, it will be difficult for us to help you even if we want to." "That's true." Therefore, Chen Chen stopped arguing with her and answered directly. "A mysterious team destroyed Lao Mian's checkpoint. We followed them through." Chen Chen left a satellite phone for Xiaoyu, and then left the ward directly. This escort operation can be said to be extremely risky. If an accident occurs in any link in the middle, not to mention Xiaoyu, the entire convoy may face the risk of being blocked. Fortunately, their breakthrough speed was fast enough, and they managed to shake off the pursuers to a certain extent. In addition, the firm response given by He Bangxiong when they passed the checkpoint solved the last problem. This cannot be considered a standard template for escort operations, but it can definitely be called a standard template for adapting to circumstances. The entire decision-making process was as fast as lightning. All available resources were mobilized, and finally, after determining that the resources were insufficient to solve the problem, the solution returned to the most primitive, simplest, and crude mode. Let's start fighting. What else can we do? The 19 Malawian Quachas fired a final salvo, destroying all the heavy machine gun positions at the checkpoint. There were 24 people in 4 vehicles, all with heavy bulletproof vests, and the Burmese man was so depressed that he couldn't even lift his head. The battle was over in less than 2 minutes, and after passing the first checkpoint, the rest became extremely easy. The closer to Mengbin they get westward, the stronger He Bangxiong's power becomes. In order to meet the Dongfeng Corps' convoy, he directly bombarded all subsequent checkpoints. Although the accuracy was terribly low, the attitude was extremely tough, which was, if this convoy can't get through, I will make things difficult for you Burmese today. After hearing this, Lao Mian finally realized the seriousness of the problem. The Dongfeng Corps had a smooth journey through the 20 kilometers of Jingdong and finally arrived at Mengbin Hospital even faster than the scheduled time. The medical staff that He Bangxiong had, prepared long ago, immediately went into battle and completed the operation in a relatively short time. Overall, the outcome of this operation does not lie in myself, but in He Bangxiong. It has to be said that a person who can make such a big splash in the gap between North and South Shan states and the Myanmar army is not someone that characters like Chen Chen and Chen Yimin can challenge. They usually don't show off their abilities, but at the critical moment, they really dare to spend all their money on it. Bombarding the outposts is also a very risky action for them. If the conflict with the Myanmar side intensifies and the entire combat schedule is advanced, the losses will definitely not be small. But he dared to do it, and did it without hesitation. Well, he's at least a good comrade. Looking at He Bangxiong, who was waiting in the hospital lobby, Chen Chen smiled. Then he stepped forward and said sincerely, "Brigade Commander He, thank you very much for this time." He Bangxiong immediately stood up and replied, "To relieve the worries of our Dongfeng Corps, Mr. Shunchuan, is she okay?" Of course, He Bangxiong had long guessed that Xiaoyu's identity was unusual. From the moment the Nakam group was completely destroyed overnight, and the moment the Jackal told him that all the leaders of the Nakam group had been beheaded, he had realized the seriousness of the problem. What's more important is that this news was actually relayed by a staff from a PMC in Thailand. The Jackal is a mercenary from Thailand. White Dog is a mercenary from Wa State, Myanmar. The shipwreck was a mercenary. What happened? Is there any need to tell me? Therefore, he made the decision even faster than Chen Chen expected. In fact, at the same time when he received the call, his artillery battalion had already begun to maneuver. Seeing He Bangxiong's serval expression, Chen Chen naturally guessed his thoughts, so he said solemnly, "We rescued this woman just as an ordinary hostage. It has nothing to do with anyone. Don't think too much." "Understood. I won't think about things I shouldn't think about. We attacked the checkpoint. It has nothing to do with you." He Bangxiong answered without hesitation. It was obvious that he did not listen to Chen Chen's words at all. Or did he listen too much? Chen Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and finally said, "No matter what, you guys worked hard this time. I will fight for you more in the future and try my best to satisfy you. Look, what does a big shot mean? Strive for it." As soon as these words came out, the taste immediately became pure. "When will I learn to speak this way?" He Bangxiong's expression suddenly became a little excited. He approached Chen Chen and asked in a low voice, "Mr. Sinking Ship, is Zhao Jiaoyang of the 505th Brigade finished?" Chen Chen frowned. He knew very well in his heart that Zhao Jiaoyang was doomed. Xiaoyu's words, "You can't go find the 505th Brigade," also clearly hinted at the attitude of some parties towards him. In this case, what else is there to say? Zhao Jiaoyang and I don't have much hatred, and it is impossible for him to know the existence of Xiaoyu. But the problem is that he is too passive, too undetermined, and too unwilling to make progress. Look at what He Bangxiong did, and look at what you did. So this is how the world is. Some people are destined to sit on the high table, and some people are destined to be stuck on the high wall. Of course, Chen Chen did not answer He Bangxiong with the attitude of the fox borrows the tiger's power this time. This is not the message that should come out of him. He just said, "There will be an answer to this question later, just wait." "Clear." He Bangxiong answered cheerfully. Chen Chen had no idea what he had interpreted from his words, but no matter what it was, it couldn't be wrong. The two chatted for a few more words, and He Bangxiong's adjutant walked in from outside the hospital. He was holding a large bag in his hand, and after saluting, he handed it to He Bangxiong. He Bangxiong handed the big bag to Chen Chen again and said, "Mr. Chen Chuan, please pass these things on. These are just some daily necessities for hospitalization. You can open them and check them. I don't mean anything else. I just show my extremely basic concern." "Okay, no problem." Chen Chen picked up the bag and continued, "Thank you for your hard work. You guys work harder." He Bangxiong said no more and left with his adjutant. Outside the hospital, dense swarms of guards had already surrounded the hospital. Chen Chen turned back to the ward, opened the bag in his hand, and placed it on the coffee table next to the bed. He was about to speak, but Xiaoyu spoke first. "Shipwreck, your identity is really untraceable. Just like you said, you are neither ours nor theirs. So who are you?" Give a thumbs up to Xiaoyu's character card. "Like I said, I'm just a mercenary." Looking into Xiaoyu's eyes, Chen Chen answered seriously. Xiaoyu also looked at him with a scrutinizing gaze, as if trying to find a hint of hesitation, retreat, or evasion on his face. But no, the two of them were confronting each other like this, evenly matched, until the doctor on rounds knocked on the door and walked in at the perfect moment, and the confrontation between them ended. Xiaoyu propped herself up, stretched out her hand for the doctor to measure her heart rate and blood pressure, and answered the doctor's questions cooperatively, as if Chen Chen didn't exist. But in the gap between her conversation with the doctor, she took the opportunity to say casually, "We can neither admit nor deny it, right?" This sentence immediately silenced Chen Chen. It seems unremarkable, and is even strongly related to what they are communicating now. But in fact, the purpose of Xiaoyu saying this is not the following sentence, is that right? But the classic line in the first half of the sentence. We can neither confirm nor deny. This can really be regarded as a classic saying of the CIA. This quote came from the K-129 incident decades ago, and later became almost the benchmark attitude of the CIA towards the so-called deep operations. At this time, Xiaoyu said this sentence just like Captain America said, "Hail Hydra." She certainly didn't want to use this sentence to blow up Chen Chen's identity. She just wanted to judge through Chen Chen's instantaneous micro-expression changes whether he might have a connection with one of their biggest enemies. Be cautious, alert, unexpected, and don't miss any opportunity. This is exactly the quality that an intelligence officer active in the secret front should have. But Chen Chen really has nothing to do with the CIA. Therefore, he didn't need to hide his expression, but just put his disgust directly on his face. Seeing his expression, Xiaoyu blinked helplessly. Okay, now we have to add one more condition. You are not one of us, you are not one of them, and you are probably not one of them either. I really don't understand. This is not a question of confidentiality. You are a local and have never had any contact with us, but having said this, Xiaoyu stopped. She knew that there was no need to say the next words, because the overall situation has been decided, and the handling plan for the man in front of him has also been finalized. After making sure that no excessive information had been leaked from his hands, the connection between this shipwreck and his case was basically declared over. Perhaps there will be further communication in the future, but it will definitely not be a continuation of this matter. Thinking of this, Xiaoyu said, "We already have a preliminary plan for your commission. After comprehensive evaluation of various factors and considering the cost you have paid, the total amount is $1.16 million US, of which $500,000 US is an additional reward. How about it? Do you think it's reasonable?" Chen Chen couldn't help but roll his eyes. The amount is quite a lot. The original mission of escorting Jia was only $500,000 US. What makes him speechless is this number with both zeros and integers. Should I say that you are rigorous or that you are stingy? $1.16 million US, I want cash. You don't have an account? You can't find anything even if I have an account. Let's just treat this as a transaction, and let's just treat what you think is a coincidence. Having said that, Xiaoyu finally gave up the attempt completely. Oh well. From now on, I'm the informant and you're the mercenary. We won't talk about anything else. How about it, deal? Make a deal. Chen Chen extended his hand to Xiaoyu, who extended his left hand and touched it with his, thus reaching a brief agreement between the two. So, what should I do next? Am I safe here? Xiaoyu asked. I think it's safe. Your only threat now comes from the Pamon camp, but they are too far away and the possibility of launching an attack is low. Unless they plan to hire a mercenary group, but none of the mercenary groups around here can fight. The Lion Corps, from Hua State. Xiaoyu interrupted. The Lion Corps is now called the East Wind Corps. So you change your name? It's not a name change, it's an incorporation. Okay. Jingdong has a mercenary group called Shadow. It is a foreign mercenary group. The main body is a small defense company in the United States. It is said to be connected with MPRI and is very powerful. Xiaoyu added. This is not classified intelligence, but just a piece of information. First of all, I don't think a mercenary group with such a name can be that strong. Secondly, I've learned about Shadow Defense. It's a mercenary group with less than 20 members. Rather than mercenaries, they are more like bounty hunters. They only do missions that look high-end, but are actually very simple, such as rescue and anti-kidnapping. They would never get involved in something like ours. Because what I do, not everyone can interfere. Finally, after 2 hours, you will be transferred to Munka. In Munka, even if MPRI comes in person, it will be useless. Chen Chen answered seriously. Okay, do you think there is any possibility that the Pamon battalion will cooperate with the Burmese? Unless old Mian is crazy. Chen Chen said without hesitation. That's all right then. What are the details of the transfer? Xiaoyu asked. We'll carry you to the car and take you from Dabong to Munka. You can't do strenuous activities yet, but you have basic mobility, so I suggest you try to get out of bed and walk around to get used to it. No problem. As he spoke, Xiaoyu called a doctor and pulled out the fluid injection needle in his right hand. In fact, lung repair surgery is not a major operation. After passing the critical period, recovery is still very fast, and the impact of small incisions on mobility is relatively controllable. At least now, unless she made any big movements, her movements were basically the same as those of a normal person. Except for her left hand, which looked a little weird and funny. It's still okay, much better than when I first came out. Xiaoyu said with satisfaction. Nonsense, you were almost dead. You should take a course on self-help for combat injuries when you return, and develop a correct understanding of your physical condition. Otherwise, it will be easy for friendly forces to misjudge their priorities, and your death will be in vain. That's right. Xiaoyu did not refute, but continued. Actually, the more serious issue is that it may drag down the team. The smaller the team, the more likely it is to be affected. But this isn't something you should be concerned about, right? There was a sly smile on her face. Chen Chen chuckled and replied, Why do you care about me? Oh, you're in a hurry. When are we leaving? Xiaoyu didn't continue to worry about it. and Chen Chen just assumed that she had never asked. We could do it now. The situation in Mengbin is quite chaotic. We should leave as soon as possible. Then let's go. Don't delay. Xiaoyu answered decisively. Therefore, all members of the assault team assembled immediately, and after replenishing a batch of basic ammunition with Yibangxiong, the convoy drove towards the small road in Dabong and headed straight for Minka. The journey went very smoothly, and Xiaoyu was very quiet all the way, until she saw Dongfeng's villa, the completed canal, and the Jianglong assault boat parked in the dock, which had just returned from Zhao Xianyuan village with the first fleet transporting the spoils. Then the expression on her face changed a little. In fact, everything started with this ship. When Laos wanted to buy this ship, its purpose was actually to crack down on Nakam's armed drug trafficking forces on the water. And now, the ship has completed its mission again in a peculiar way. Now that Nuakong is dead, the country has returned to the hands of their own people. So you didn't dare to breathe deeply. After getting off the car, Chen Chen immediately pushed the prepared wheelchair to her. Sitting on the wheelchair, she said with some emotion, "Leaving this ship to you, it can be regarded as a kind of home." Chen nodded silently without replying. Beside them, the jackal and the white dog had already begun shouting and directing the transportation of the spoils. Although it was already past midnight, everyone still followed the old tradition of the Dongfeng Corps and placed all the spoils on the open space in front of the villa. Don't delay at all in doing what needs to be done, especially when it comes to distributing rewards after the war. We're rich. The ship is sunk. We're rich, the jackal said excitedly. Can you find something to hold down the scattered cash? If a gust of wind comes later, you won't have anywhere to cry. It's okay. It's just a small amount. Who cares? Do you know how much cash we seized? All of Nuakong's cash assets are probably here. There's very little money in his bank account, and most of the transactions are in cash. Hey, guess how much is it? Chen Chen thought for a moment and replied. About 12 million US dollars? Almost. 12.6 million US dollars. This is cash. I never thought that he, a drug dealer, would have so much cash. In fact, there is nothing strange about this. At this point in 2010, underground banks in the northern Fujian province had not yet expanded their business, and USDD had not been issued. Money laundering was still a strategy with extremely high technical difficulty and was not used unless necessary. Storing cash is very common, and it is even more common for drug dealers to store cash. If most of Nakam's funds were not concentrated in equipment and goods, he would have even more money. More than 12 million US dollars sounds exaggerated, but in the entire evil and distorted financial market of the Golden Triangle, it is really not a very large number. Therefore, Chen Chen is not very excited. After all, the equipment cost alone for this operation cost him 3 million US dollars. In addition to the commissions and pensions that had to be paid to Mu Gue and Chasley, considering the basic principle of loot distribution, he actually only got about 7 million US dollars. Adding other valuable items, excluding equipment, the net profit was about 9 million US dollars. Is it a lot? For ordinary people, it is too much. But for a mercenary group, especially a mercenary group in northern Myanmar, it is just the price of a few new equipment. But it is still a lot of money after all. You can't ask for too much. Chen Chen comforted himself and walked to the pile of trophies. This time, the most conspicuous things were the two cannons. An M56 105mm mountain howitzer and an AH-2 camel-mounted 155mm caliber howitzer. Needless to say, the former is one of the most commonly used types of artillery in light infantry tactics. It was developed in the 1950s and is still used by dozens of countries today. The structure of this gun is extremely simple. It can be directly disassembled into 11 parts and can be quickly maneuvered by being carried on the back of people or horses. It is a common weapon in plateau and mountain warfare. However, convenience does not mean that it has strong combat effectiveness. In fact, it is a balanced weapon designed in the post-war context. There are no particularly outstanding advantages, but there are no major disadvantages either. If I have to describe its strengths, it's just one word: stable. Such characteristics make it difficult for it to play any role in defeating the enemy. So much so that in this place that is extremely sensitive to artillery, warlords will allow some special partners to have M56 guns. Chen Chen still remembered hearing someone say that Ga Yaozi, who was defeated by the Dongfeng Corps, had an M56, but it didn't play any role at all. But this is just an M56. The AH-2 is completely different. 52 times the caliber, 30 kilometers range, can use rocket-assisted extended-range shells. The shells can use airburst fuses and are paired with high-explosive grenades. One shell can cover half of a football field. This kind of thing should never appear in Nuakong's hands, but he got it anyway, which shows how far his business had developed before his death. His origins are nothing more than two: Pakistan and Africa. It would be fine if Pakistan sold him some 19 Malawian kwaches and M56, but they dared to sell him AH-2? Chen Chen's first reaction was shock, but after thinking about it carefully, he felt that it was illogical. It probably wasn't from Pakistan, it was most likely from a country in Africa. However, no matter where it came from, this cannon could not be kept. If it was not blown up, it could only be sold to a trusted team. But who should I sell it to? Chen Chen frowned and thought, and at that moment, Xiaoyu slowly came to his side in a wheelchair. Don't know what to do? She asked. Yes, the 105 is fine, but I really don't know what to do with this AH-2. How about selling it to you? Hearing Chen Chen's words, Xiaoyu pursed his lips and replied. H2 is just PLL01. It has no recycling value at all. It's just an antique. It's not an antique, is it? It's hard to make a living in northern Myanmar. Why do you all start to look down on the 155-meter dungeon now? Chen Chen asked back angrily. We have better ones. You're just a mercenary. But go play somewhere else and don't touch me. Chen Chen shook his head helplessly and turned to continue looking at other trophies. Apart from cash, gold, jewelry, and a large amount of equipment, the things seized from Noakong were really unremarkable. The other 10 night vision goggles that he had originally hoped to get from the Viper squad were also lost. Once the battle started, they ran faster than anyone else. Chen Chen couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. It couldn't be said to be disappointment. It should be said to be regret. He waved his hand to signal the others to pack up their equipment. Peng Shuqing, who came over following the smell, collected a large number of guns and weapons they didn't want as usual, and the rest were temporarily left there waiting to be processed. The exciting money-dividing session did not last long, as Mu Gui and Chaseley's commissions were settled on the spot. The situation on Mu Gui's side was relatively more troublesome, and both sides spent some time communicating. There were no casualties in Chaseley, just some equipment damage. I just went through the company's channels to get reimbursed, took the commission and bonus and left. It was very simple. After everything was done, Chen Chen couldn't help but feel a little regretful when he saw the AH-2 door that was finally dragged from the ship to the door of the villa. One less look would be enough. How about firing a cannon to try it out? Forget it. Once the cannon is fired, it is estimated that not only the 7th Brigade, but also the entire Northern Shan State will jump up. Just as he was struggling with how to play with this cannon, Xiaoyu appeared beside him again. Do you want to keep this cannon? In no mood, Chen Chen answered decisively. It's impossible to keep it unless someone appoints it. It is impossible to appoint someone to office, Xiaoyu smiled and continued. But there is another way. Will you listen? Just consider it as a way of repaying you for saving my life.